What time do you meet?
3 minutes.
Who was that? Someone was looking through the doors if they were waiting. Huh?
Karen is saying that the minutes of the cabinet on the 19th of December.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, I make it 3 o'clock, so we've got quite a busy agenda. So I wish you all a happy new year and hope that we can have a good one. So off we go with apologies for absence. Any from the floor? Can't see any other indications. Thank you. I'll just say at this moment in time that there is a third item to go on the agenda under 7, which will make it 7.3, which are the minutes and recommendations of the cabinet meeting of the 19th of December. Now these were circulated electronically and circulated in the rooms this morning. So you have had them. We'll take that when we come to 7.3. Okay, minutes. Before I do the minutes, I'd like to introduce, you're all aware of the runners we have. We have Nicola, who is super fit, as it were. She runs up and down here, and we've got a new one, Mandy. Mandy's never done this before. She's relatively new and she doesn't know who you are. So if you're called to speak, please indicate to Mandy that you want the microphone. But you'll only get it when I say you can have it. Right. Minutes, right. Here we go, pages 9 to 30 of the previous meeting. Accuracy. Councillor Pidcock.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you. I'm asking a minute on page 13, the top of the page.
What page number?
Page 13.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask a question whether the leader has received a series of articles that I've sent him from New Statesman about austerity. And is it right that he actually said austerity was coming to an end? Did he actually say that? Because if he did, it's not true.
This is for accuracy.
The minute is austerity was coming to an end. Is that accurate? If it is, it's not true.
And that was in the publication you read, was it?
Page 13 of this large booklet that we all received. Page 13.
Well, you've made your point, thank you. Anybody else on the minutes? Thank you. Let's go back to the agenda. Disclosure of members' interests. Before we get there, I want Chief Legal Officer Liam Henry to say one or two bits about item 7.3.
Yes. Yes, Chairman. You've just introduced item 7.3, the minutes of Cabinet of the 19th of December, which will come up for consideration very shortly. It was just to draw to members' attention the item and recommendation in relation to the Council Tax Support Scheme and the proposed changes to that scheme. It occurs to me as monitoring officer, and apologies that it has only just occurred to me in the last hour or so, that there may be members within the chamber who are in receipt of council tax support, or who have members of their family who are in receipt of council tax support. I mention that obviously in the context of the need to declare an interest if that is the case. I am of the opinion, however, and this is without any comment on the merits of this particular item and the merits of the recommendation, I am of the opinion that the interest is not so significant, if you indeed do have an interest, if the interest is not so significant as to constitute a prejudicial interest, in which case it would not be necessary for you to withdraw from the chamber today in consideration of this particular item. You may, of course, declare personal interest if there is that entitlement, but I don't believe it to be so significant as to constitute a prejudicial interest that would require you to withdraw from consideration of the item. I hope that's clear, but if members have any questions, please shout up.
First of all, any questions on that? Yes, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. My partner cares for two adults with learning difficulties and receives council tax support.
Those individuals receive council tax support?
Yes.
Is
that the same thing as what we're
no,
talking about?
it would only be if you yourself as a member, your partner, or a member of your family were in receipt of council tax support. You may need to declare an interest, not a prejudicial interest, but a personal interest. But not if you have a relationship that is beyond a family membership or a very close association.
Right. Any further questions? If not, I'll then open up for declarations of interest. I can't see anybody. Declarations of interest. Anybody? Councillor Reid.
Last item on the agenda, part 2, I am a Director of Advancement. So I declare that I'm a Director of Advanced Northumberland.
Councillor Davey.
Yes, thanks for that question from Councillor Hill to Councillor Jackson.
So, Councillor Davey, I'm taking declarations of interest.
Yeah, it's an interest, Chair, in a question from Councillor Hill to Councillor Jackson. I believe I'll have to leave the room because I'm a material witness for the police in the question.
Okay. Councillor.
Thanks, Councillor Davey. The item in which you've declared an interest is only a question to the member. It's not up for consideration otherwise by councillors today. So in my view, it wouldn't be absolutely necessary for you to withdraw, but it's a matter for you.
Right. Councillor Richards, then.
In section 7.
I've got Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. I have an interest, as per what Liam's advice was there, with regards to family members in receipt of council tax support. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jones. Councillor Heppel at the back. Councillor Jones, then.
I'd also like to declare a personal interest in item 7C on the same grounds.
Same point, Chair.
Thank you.
In terms of council tax support, I have not me but a family member who has.
Councillor Jackson.
Yes, Chair, I just declare a personal and prejudicial interest in any matters in relation to personal indemnities which were in the Cabinet minutes. If there's any discussion on that, I'll leave the room. Thank you.
Councillor Riddle and Councillor Wearmouth.
Likewise, exactly the same as the leader. If there's any discussion on personal indemnities, I will leave the room.
Can't see it.
Same disclosure as Councillor Reid in terms of chair of advance.
Councillor Nesbitt, microphone's on its way.
My declaration of interest is on item 7 as well, because I've got a family member. I believe she's still on the council tax.
Right.
Yeah, and same for myself and Councillor Jackson on the part 2 item.
Right. I can't see anybody else. Right. Okay, let's move on. Announcements. I, the business chair. Got it. 1. Northumberland County Council Holocaust Memorial Day event. The annual NCC Holocaust Memorial event will take place on Thursday the 24th of January here in the council chamber, and members are encouraged to attend. The event is open to the public and will start with the raising of the Holocaust Memorial flag and a blessing by Rabbi Lipsy at 3:45 prior to the service in the chamber at 4 p.m. The event will be hosted by our Voices for Choices young people and will last around 90 minutes. The theme for this year is Torn from Home, and apart from music contributions, we will hear the experiences of some of our refugees. As part of the memorial event, the Fuse Centre at Prudhoe will be showing films free of charge on the 29th and 30th of January, including Life is Beautiful, Schindler's List, and Escape from Sobibor. Thank you. Should you wish to attend one of these viewings, contact Jackie Rowe. 2. Social Worker of the Year Award. Zoe Williamson from Rothbury won the category of Mental Health Social Worker of the Year and Overall Social Worker of the Year, thereby taking the title Best Social Worker in Britain 2018. The Chief Executive and Leader of the Council will write to congratulate her, and I'm sure we will. Northumberland, this is the LGC Awards. Northumberland has been shortlisted in 3 categories: Digital Impact, Health and Social Care, and Public Partnerships. The winners will be announced on the 13th of March. 4. Her Majesty the Queen Honours List. I'll just name them. Just take us a minute, if that. Knights Bachelor, Jim Mackey, Chief Executive, Northumberland Healthcare Foundation Trust. OBE, Shirley Ann Atkinson. John James Lawler, Diane Spence, John Richard Healy. MBE, Margaret Barrett, Dr. Stanley George Beckinsale, Helen Marion Susan Milner, Yvonne Armstrong Ormston, and Susan Pierce. This is the BEM, Alan Jeffrey Ball, the Reverend Janet Leslie Jackson, Kenneth Sidney John. And finally, over the page, David Anthony O'Connor, Peter Craig Robertson, and Diana Robertson. So we wish and congratulate all those people that's received awards. And I will hand over to the Leader of the Council, Peter Jackson, to announce the Northumberland Tourism Award that we got.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it was a great honour for me to go down to London and actually pick up a National Tourism Award for this county. So this year we were the winner of a category in the British Travel Awards of 2018. We are the best UK holiday county. Isn't that great for our county?
Correspondence, I have none. Didn't even get sent any Farming Magazines grant. So. Questions, 6. This is to be put today. Question 1, Councillor Hill to Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. What progress has been made following the decision made by this authority some months ago to review its constitution?
It is on. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Hill. Following the decision taken by full council, officers have been conducting a preliminary review of the constitution to ensure that it properly reflects the changes that have been agreed by full council since it was last published in November 2017. Due to other work commitments, that review has taken longer than expected, but I'm pleased to advise that it has now been completed and a meeting of the working group is being arranged for an early date.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Chair. Could you give assurances, and there's something in the answer that does give me concern, and that's the word officer review. Can you give assurances that this won't just be a tick box exercise, that there will be councillors involved in the process, that the methodology will be sufficient so key aspects are drawn to the attention, comparisons are made with other local authorities, because it's quite clear to me in recent months the inadequacy of the constitution, and it must be not just, with all respect to the officers involved, but it needs to have councillor input and be a thorough job, not just a tick box exercise.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. I can give you those assurances. Councillor Dodd and I will be meeting with officers shortly to make those arrangements, and yes, you have those assurances.
Question 2, Councillor Hill to Councillor Jackson.
Thank you. Can you confirm that Northumberland County Council is doing everything in its power to help the users of the Brydale Centre in Blythe following the recent damning news about management problems at the centre?
Right, thank you. This was a very, very grave situation, and I've been both flabbergasted and actually shocked to hear some of the stories that we've got coming out of the Brydale Centre. But I'll tell you what we're actually doing to positively try and address that difficult situation. We were actually identified as the County Council in November that the charity responsible for running the Brydale Centre was in serious financial difficulties, actually not paying its salaries for several months. The charity requested and was given support for salaries and running costs, as well as officer support to identify the extent of the issues. A thorough assessment has been carried out by the Community Council's officers, including adequacy of the financial government procedures. There have been allegations of money going missing, and that we do know the certainty of imminent bankruptcy of the finances of that organisation. But we could not support it until that situation was fully assessed, and we've done that now. And the county council have made the trustees formally aware of the serious governance concerns in a letter, and has made a repayable loan to the charity to pay the overdue salaries. It is an important community facility, and actually serving some of the most vulnerable people in that community. And this administration is determined not to let it fail because of management and mismanagement of others. The trustees were subsequently advised that they had a formal duty to report a serious incident to the Charity Commission, and informed of the process to follow. We're not totally sure whether they've actually done that yet. The County Council has already also made its own referral to the Charity Commission. The County Council has clarified in writing to the trustees what action has been taken to date. The County Council has liaised with the Blythe Community and Voluntary Association and Blythe Town Council to provide as much support to the Brydale Community Centre as possible. The trustees asked the County Council to take over the temporary management of the centre, as the trustees viewed the continued future of the operation of the centre as unviable at this time. Our officers have arranged a handover meeting on the 31st of December of 2018, and a formal handover of the keys in the centre took place as early as the 2nd of January of this month. Since then, our officers have undertaken an immediate assessment of the Brydale Community Centre, which has included a full overview of the services provided, a full review of health and safety matters, which has actually raised some serious concerns, a full financial overview, and arranging basic cash flow systems, inventory and assets, and a full review of insurance arrangements. It is also important to note that the trustees remain fully responsible for the operation of the charity and its liabilities. Temporary support provided by the council in no way absolves the trustees of this responsibility. Our support has been provided to protect vital community services for some of our most vulnerable residents. Now, moving forward, the County Council is now working with Blyth CVA and other stakeholders to ensure that such vital council services are maintained with a new provider, and we will continue to provide as much support as we are able at this time. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Chair. I think residents in Blyth and across Northumberland would be concerned on 2 points, and you've answered the first one, and that is taking steps to put things right for vulnerable residents in Blyth. The second point is, has there been negligence? And if there has been negligence, will that rare thing happen for once that will be accountability? And in short, how on earth was this allowed to happen?
Well, as you well know, up until this point, the County Council has had no involvement in the running of that community centre. It has been done by trustees, and they're publicly available on the Charity Commission website. There are matters of serious investigation to undertake, both for us and for other organisations. For example, why on earth has it taken just a matter of 9 or 10 months for a community centre that was running on a perfectly reasonable basis to actually come to a situation of utter collapse? There were issues with the appointments process of the management of the centre. There are issues with the general financial management and the tracking of the funds of that centre. Serious questions are being asked about it. We're being asked, was it jobs for the boys in Blyth? What has happened to the money? Who is responsible? Who is going to make up the shortfall and the deficit? It really is a serious situation, and it's actually so serious that it's subject to a police investigation. I'm just asking, where were the trustees in all this? Where were the responsibilities? I think it was only reasonable for people to accept the fact that the trustees should actually realise that they recognise their failings and actually resign with immediate effect, actually. If those trustees are representatives of the community in any way, shape or form, they should actually hold their hands up and admit what the failings of that centre are. Thank you.
3, Councillor Dale. To me, Councillor Dodd.
Thank you. Excuse me. Sorry. Thank you. Please could Health and Wellbeing Overview and Scrutiny in the West Area Committee have the opportunity to review the provision of overnight services at Hexham Hospital without further delay?
Well, I passed this to the Chief Executive, who instructed that it was going to scrutiny, which in January it has done, and it was just debated yesterday. And just a correction, we do not now have the West Area Committee anymore. It's now Tynedale Local Area Council.
Thank you, and thank you for informing me about that. When I put the question in, I actually put it in last November, and you were going to respond before then. After that, and you didn't respond, I wrote to you in December, and once again I had to remind you about a lack of response at that time, at which I did get an email from the Chief Exec explaining that I should go to the NHS. And that is why I thought it was only right to come to this council to ask that the people of the Hexham area, the west of Tynedale, are allowed to have an open discussion and learn from the NHS what evening service they are going to deliver at Hexham. And I think it is only right that we take that presentation to the West Area Tynedale Council, whatever it is, committee.
That's a statement.
Pardon?
I need a question.
I'm asking you a question. them. Please, will you allow that to come to the area, the Tynedale Council Area Committee on the next available meeting, please?
Well, I took it to the Chief Executive and she said it has to go to scrutiny, and that's done so. Thank you. Can I move on?
That is incorrect information I have, and I will take that up. Thank you, with you, because that is misinformation you're giving out.
Question 4. Councillor Dale to Councillor me.
Can't see you.
Well, it's not going to me, it's going to the Chairman of Family and Children's Services, Councillor Renner Thompson.
Thank you. I gather, since I put my question in, like the last question, that it has been agreed that the Children's Services Open View Scrutiny will be reviewing the update of the school's formula on Thursday. So I welcome that, and likewise I welcome the fact that you actually answered my question before full council. One of the things that is coming up, I don't know if you can hear me or not, or where you want me to speak. One of the issues I would like you to look at is the West area are very keen to keep their first schools, and that is well known. The other opportunity they've been given is to go primary. The unsustainability of primary schools in future years is unsure. However, I've done a lot of work with Federation. I'm doing some paper work. I'm going to ask, yes, I'm asking him a question.
It seems we get to this point every time. Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, but I have to remind the question that response to Councillor Jackson gave, and that was 2 pages plus the rest of the response.
Well,
Can I just say to you, thank you. Please, could you look at overview and scrutiny? Please look at the the funding formula for first schools, but also the funding formula for some of those schools becoming primary, and the benefits of federations, because our small villages want to keep their first schools, and it's important that everybody understands.
Thank you, Councillor Dale. I'm sure that's something
Councillor
that
Thompson, can you stand just for the camera?
Thank you, Councillor Dale. I'm sure that's something that we'll discuss at the meeting tomorrow. I know you already emailed me about this in November. If you ever want to discuss anything about scrutiny, feel free to email me again or any of the officers rather than bring it into this forum. Thank you very much.
Is it a question? Yeah.
I think I'm actually allowed a second. I think I'm allowed a response to your answer. Just to say thank you, and I have actually done that before, and you have emailed me back.
Okay, thank you. Right, let's move on to receive the minutes of Cabinet. Item 7, so page 31. So this is the meeting of the 13th of November. Any questions? I see no one indicating to speak. So let's move on to page 40, which is Tuesday the 11th of December, pages 41 to 48. Anybody wish to speak or correct anything? And we accept the minutes of these 2 meetings? Agreed. And item move on to item 7.3, which you should have. And this is the meeting of the 19th of December. I'm just trying to find it. Right.
We've just received these minutes, and so I haven't had a thorough read of it. There may be an explanation further through the minutes that I've kind of not come up across yet. But it appears that Councillor Oliver understood there's a proposal for a 50% cut in council tax support during 2017. And quite categorically state that officers may have had that in their plans, but they did not bring it to the Labour group at that time.
Councillor Grimshaw? Councillor Oliver, then I'll take Councillor Grimshaw.
That was definitely the case. There is, I mean, I've got it here in front of me. There was a proposal, and it was going to go to Cabinet in October of 2017, and then to full council in November of 2017. So I find it quite alarming that you, as Labour leader, didn't know about it when it was a significant policy change, and it was only a few months of it ahead of it going to Cabinet.
Councillor Grimshaw?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I too disagree with Councillor Oliver's comments, because in fact at our last meeting I did say to Councillor Oliver if it had come to the Labour administration that the Labour group would have vehemently opposed any proposal to increase or impose any tax on the most vulnerable in society. And this most, I mean, when they say that austerities have come to an end, I find it atrocious that they're still going ahead with this horrible, horrible tax. And I still oppose it. And I would just like to know how many people who's actually on this had responded. A lot of vulnerable people who has got learning disabilities, etc., who has had no access to computers to actually to formalise their disdain in this. So I would just like to know what proportion of people, how many people in different categories were actually asked this question, whether they wanted this implemented or not. Thank you.
Councillor Oliver?
Well, to take your first point about not being aware of it, I mean, obviously I don't know whether you were aware of it or not, but all I can say it was part of a proposal for the overall savings of the council, and the consultation was I mean, I've got the timetable here in front of me. It was so May 2017 was the election. Had you been the administration after the election, this is your administration's timetable. It was a cabinet report prior to consultation in June of 2017, 1 month after the election, followed by a consultation process lasting for 3 months, and I've said earlier, followed by cabinet and then full council. So either you didn't know about it and you were asleep at the wheel, or you did know about it. I mean, it has to be one or the other. In terms of the consultation process, I haven't got the figures to hand. Obviously, you know, we have been through this in scrutiny, but there were, I think, around about 500 consultee responses. I can't remember precisely what proportion are actually in receipt of the council tax support, but the letters sent out to people asking them to respond were sent proportionately to people on council tax support. It was also very well publicised right across social media, in the newspapers. It's been very well covered right across the county in every single local newspaper. It's been all over social media. It's been publicised in job centres. It's been publicised in libraries. I can't really see that we could have done much more to publicise it. So everybody was given an opportunity, and there was a reasonable response.
Go on, Councillor Grimshaw again, and then I'll move on.
Could I then ask then how many people do you think was actually informed? Because 500 I don't think is a great response about how many people who will be in receipt of this council tax. Horrible, horrible, horrible implementation.
Thank you. Well, the first point about horrible implementation is it's not something we do lightly, but we are looking for £36 million worth of savings. And actually the proposal that the Labour group were putting forward before we became the administration was for £5 million. So that's 5 times worse than what we're proposing. We don't do it lightly, but actually, you know, the receipts of this benefit will be better off under a Conservative administration than they would have been under a Labour administration.
Right, I want to... What's the point of order?
The point of order is clarification, Chair. I can categorically clarify that those reports of that standing and nature would have never got aid or got through Labour Group. It would have stuck that up the office as well and truly. Yes. It would have never been an element of our thing. Thanks very much.
Right, let's... can we agree the minutes and then move on to a substantial vote. Yes. Councillor Hill.
Just a point of clarity. Are we actually voting on the recommendation or are we just noting the minutes?
I have to both note the minutes and then we'll vote on the so can we note the minutes? Councillor Reid. It's all right, we've got you.
Is that on? Yes, it is. It's funny the way this is written, really, isn't it? 8% reduction. It's basically everybody is going to have to pay at least 8% of the council tax. That's what this amounts to. And what my worry would be, regardless of whether you think this is right or wrong, or whether you're desperate for the money, have you thought about how difficult it is going to be to collect this 8% of some people? Now, to get your budget to balance is dead easy. You just dream up things, £100,000 income from this and £200,000 income from that, and it all adds up, but it's actually doing it. The hard part of that is getting 8% out of some of the most vulnerable people that live in Northumberland. You are going to find it difficult. You're going to be taking people to court. You're going to be summoning, and it's not just a trauma. It's not just a trauma that's going to inflict on individuals. It's actually getting the money. That's the hard part. Saying it is easy. Getting it is going to be very, very difficult. And you've taken on a mammoth task, and I do not envy your mailbag over the next year when you start to see the actual implications of what you're doing. Saying it is easy, doing it is bloody difficult. And the only other thing can I move on to something else on the agenda?
No, I want to get this on
these minutes.
We've agreed the minutes. We're now going to vote on this bit.
Well, can I just make an observation on
if you're quick,
the council plan? If you look at the little maps in the back, everyone says where it is, apart from the last one, which is a big green blob on a thing with lines on. Got no idea where that is. Could somebody tell me where that is? Thank you.
Councillor Oliver. Yeah, well,
no, sorry, thank you. Yes, we do appreciate it will be difficult. The normal collection rate of council tax in this authority is one of the best in the region. I think it's circa 98.3%. For the purposes of this budget proposal, it's been set at 83%. And that's benchmarked against other local authorities in the northeast of England. I think it's worth pointing out that every other local authority, apart from currently Northumberland and Durham, do charge everybody a proportion of their council tax. And if this proposal is implemented, we will be still, the second. I don't really want to use the word generous, but it'll be the second lowest charges of any authority in the northeast. And there are only about 10% of authorities right across the country that actually that don't make these charges.
Okay, I'm going to Councillor Campbell at the back. Nicola. No.
Thank you, Chair. I did ask before at a previous meeting that he would look at this again and show some compassion. Because there are other authorities who are doing this, that doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's right at this moment in time. I mean, even Universal Credits, the Minister's looking again at that. They are showing some compassion there, albeit late in the day, but they're doing it. And I would ask again that he would not, at this moment in time, with all the pressures that's on families, horrendous pressures on families out there, and working families, that you would just look again at it. Maybe come back to it in future years, but at this moment in time, it just seems as if we're hammering the people who can least afford it. It's dreadful. We shouldn't be sitting here doing this for the amount of money that's involved. And it's right what Councillor Reid said. It's the pressure when those letters come through the door saying you haven't paid this month, or you're not paying next month, you owe 3 months. There'll be added costs to that, there'll be court costs. The amounts will go up and up and up. And it seems I didn't get elected to do that to the poor. And I'm sure you probably didn't either, but I would ask you again just to sit back and think about it. For that small amount of money, I don't think it's worth any of us getting a bad reputation for that, to be seen to be crucifying the people who can least afford it.
Councillor Graham again. Grimshaw, sorry.
Thank you. Yes, we are proud of our collection rate of money, but the thing is, it hasn't been implemented on these poor people who is going to have the impact on the 8%. And how are they going to pay it back? And indeed, what's going to happen to them if they can't pay it back? How are you going to evict them because because they'll be in arrears and debt, and they're just making themselves worse? I mean, the homelessness rate's gone up. It's absolutely ridiculous. And now we're talking about people who are using food banks more, and they can't afford to feed their children. The poverty in children's rising. And yes, we should be proud that we're only 2 out of Northumberland and Durham that have actually not implemented to date. And I think we should stick to that. Thank you, Chair.
I've got Councillor Dale at the front and then Councillor Dungworth.
Thank you. Can I agree just with some of the remarks some of the councillors said? But also one of the biggest issues I have is the number of children who are now becoming in need. And the overspend on the county council's budget was £5.6 million. Now that is because we have got vulnerable children. And the people who will be hit by that 8% are probably those families who have vulnerable children, children in need. And I find it very, very wrong that we should be doing this at this time, especially as universal credit has proved to have errors, let's say.
Councillor Dungworth.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm proud as well that we're one of 2 councils that still give this rebate, and I'm not going to apologise for that. I think the plight of the working poor in this country has been well documented recently, with or without the effects of universal credit. We are talking about families living on the very edge here, and we are talking about children in those families living on the very edge. There's lots of reports coming backwards and forwards at the moment about an 8% increase here and another £20 a week, another £50 a week. To most of us in this chamber, that's not a big thing. We can sort of manage that. But when you are literally down to pennies at the end of the month in terms of your spending, and it's a choice between the kids' school uniform, between food, between heating, or between paying just 8%, those are choices that I've never had to make, and I hope none of you have to make, but they are really serious, substantial, difficult choices, and we don't need to do this. It doesn't make enough money to make that hardship worthwhile. I will not be supporting this.
Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. The first point to make, it is disappointing when something like this is just brought, that we're actually voting on this today. I was just told of this a few hours ago. An anxious resident of mine emailed me this morning, said, is there any update about the council tax benefit? Is anything happening today? And I said, no, there isn't. Then I had to email them back, and I think it makes us all look pretty stupid, to be honest, an important decision like this without notice. What I would say is that I completely understand, and it's a lot to do with the financial mismanagement of the previous administration. Well, I mean, Nick, the current administration are saying one thing, and I actually have seen the evidence you were planning to cut it by 50%, and given the track record, I tend to know who I would believe on this. But getting back to the issue itself, I do appreciate this tough financial decisions. However, what must be principled, and certainly from my point of view, drawing a line in the sand is when it comes to the most vulnerable members of society, and when it's people who £2 a week for most of us just as something, a coin we have in our pocket to buy a newspaper or whatever, but for some people £2 is literally a few meals, and it really makes that much difference. And I really would urge, appreciate the financial difficulty and tough decisions have to be made, but I really think hitting the most vulnerable, and I don't buy the consultation, because frankly, so it's one of these consultations which, lo and behold, it's got the answer that's been, angled for, to be perfectly honest.
Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor has made some of the points that I was going to make, but we are facing, as a council, some extremely difficult decisions. And why are we having to do that? Well, I've made no secret about this £65 million black hole that we inherited from the previous Labour administration. It's true, we've shown you the figures time after time after time. We have to come to a balanced budget. Now, we're actually getting to a stage where the finances of this council and this county are starting to get more into balance, but we still have a significant challenge. Now, the public consultation went out, and 51 or 52% of the people surveyed, on a reasonable, statistically significant survey, 51 to 52% of those people actually agreed that most people in this county should actually make a contribution, a very small contribution, to council services. So why do we think it's so important to actually get the finances of the county right? Well, just so to address those very points, so we can actually look after the most vulnerable people in our county. We've got a rapidly ageing population in Northumberland, so we've got a draw on services for elderly people, and we're doing absolutely everything we can to maintain those. We do have a higher number of children and young people with special education needs and special needs generally. That's actually costing us as a council a significant amount of money. But so we're setting aside more money every single year to address those needs of the vulnerable people in our society. And we're making a big deal of actually maintaining day-to-day services for everyone right across the county. We have to collect the bins, we have to maintain the roads, and we have to maintain the green areas and the parks, and we're doing all of that in the most efficient and effective way that we can. And actually those local day-to-day services are actually, in my view, being done extremely well by the council staff. So we've got to maintain this vast operation, look after the vulnerable people, and to do that we've got to make sure that we have the income to pay for all of those services. So this is just a small charge. The people who are going to be subject to this charge are still going to get a 92% reduction in their council tax. And I think that's quite significant. So we're just asking for a small contribution. It's difficult because it's something that a lot of people possibly aren't used to paying. But it's going to be a small amount, and we will not raise it one penny from what we're proposing now for the next few years at the very least, while we're the administration. I think we need to make these difficult decisions. We've been put in a position by the previous misadministration of this council, and it's just something that unfortunately we have to propose, and we feel that we have a duty to propose. And it's a decision that this council actually has been putting off for the last 5 or 6 or 7 years. Other councils right across the country are doing this. Other councils right across the country are addressing those issues about collection rates. And if you keep the amount small, then you'll make it easier for people to pay. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to actually ease the pain of a difficult decision that we've been put into by that Labour administration over there. Thank you.
Councillor Oliver, I want to move on after this. I can see.
Do you
want to wait?
finalise
Nick, do you want to wait, and I'll take Councillor Foster,
okay.
and then you can sum up and we'll move on.
I, Daniel Blake. I know one of your ministers thinks it's based completely in fiction, but it's actually an accurate depiction of how people are living today. I ask, how many of you actually watched it, and are you still comfortable setting this cut in council tax benefit when you can see just how difficult it is for people to live day to day, and you still want to impose this cut. It's shameful.
Councillor Oliver.
I went to see I, Daniel Blake at the Forum Cinema in Hexham with the week it came out, and it is difficult, this decision, but I think it's a fair and equitable decision. We're looking to make £36 million worth of cuts right across council services. Other areas are being asked to take a much bigger hit, significantly bigger. We've talked about children's services and adult services. We're putting more money than ever before into those services. We're taking a different approach to addressing some of the problems. Rather than throwing revenue money at it more and more and more, and rather than living with constant overspends, we're rebasing budgets, we're taking a realistic approach to what those services cost to run, and we're looking at ways to make them better, but we're also looking at ways to make them cheaper. So we're looking at increasing the provision within this county so that people can access the services closer to where they live and to stay closer to their families. So we're making some significant changes. We're leaving no stones unturned to address these issues. But we do have to make these savings, and I keep coming back to that. It's unfortunate that we do, but it's unavoidable. We have to find the savings. We have to find we are responsible for producing a balanced budget. And we're looking for a contribution of about £1 million, which is less than 3% of the total savings we're looking for. But we will use that money, and we'll use as much money as we can to provide increasing and better support for the most vulnerable people across our county. We're taking some serious actions to improve employability, to attract more jobs to the county. We're trying to improve education. We're making some fundamental shifts in a lot of policy areas that will improve prospects for everybody in our county, but we need to fund those areas. Thank you.
Right. To get Councillor Grimshaw, you've had a few times. Right, I want to move on. Right. Right, we need to have a vote on who wants a name vote. Who's in favour of a name vote?
That's sufficient, Chair.
Sufficient? Right, okay. First of all, on this meeting, the Cabinet meeting of the 19th, and it is coming up later, can we agree to note the Northumberland Local Plan Publication Draft Plan? And it's resolved that it's all there in front of you. Can we get that? And I'll come to this next one. Can we agree that? That's it. I know where it was. It's Whittledean Pond.
Northwest of Harlow Hill.
Yeah, next to the Robin Hood on the Military Road. Because I used to live near there. Anyway. Right. No, I didn't. It's not for sale. Right. Approval of the council tax scheme, and it's resolved there, and we have to agree these, and it's been proposed that we have a name vote. So we go with those in favour.
You just want to read out the resolutions that everyone proposed.
Right, the resolutions are: the results of the public consultation be noted, an 8% reduction in the level of council tax support for all working age claimants to be approved. C, the council tax support scheme attached at Appendix 1 to the report be approved for the financial year 2019 to 20. And D, the report of the corporate services and economic growth overview and scrutiny be noted. Right, let's have a named vote. Those in favour. Oh, no, sorry. Liam, shout them out.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Armstrong.
Is it this our vote now for not accepting it, or could you just reiterate what you voted?
If
please, I couldn't hear what you were saying.
what you would. Is it? 80 million. It's on page 6, Councillor Grimshaw. It's there in front of you. You are voting either in favour of the 8% reduction, or if you vote not happy with that, you vote against. Liam.
You're taking them as a group, I think.
A,
Yeah,
B, C and
essentially
D,
you're
the whole
taking
lot.
B. Yeah. For the sake of completeness, Councillor Armstrong.
4.
Councillor Bond.
4.
Councillor Bainan.
4.
Councillor Bridget.
Against.
Councillor Campbell.
Against.
Councillor Carty.
Against.
Councillor Castle.
4.
Councillor Clark.
Against.
Councillor Crosby.
Abstain.
Councillor Dale. Councillor Daly.
4.
Councillor Davy, Grant Davy.
Against.
Councillor Dodd.
4.
Councillor Dunbar.
4.
Councillor Dunworth. Councillor Dunn. Councillor Flux.
4.
Councillor Foster. Councillor Gallagher.
Against.
Councillor Gibson.
4.
Councillor Gobin. Councillor Grimshaw.
Against.
Councillor Happel.
Against.
Councillor Hill.
Against.
Councillor Homer.
4.
Councillor Horncastle.
4.
Councillor Hutchinson.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Jones.
4.
Councillor Kennedy.
Against.
Councillor Lang.
Against.
Councillor Ledger.
Against.
Councillor Moore.
4.
Councillor Murray.
4.
Councillor Nesbitt.
Against.
Councillor Oliver.
4.
Councillor Parry.
Against.
Councillor Patterson.
4.
Councillor Pidcock.
Against.
Councillor Purvis.
Against.
Councillor Quinn.
4.
Councillor Jeffreid.
Abstain.
Councillor Renner Thompson.
4.
Councillor Richards.
Against.
Councillor Rickerby.
Abstain.
Councillor Riddle.
4.
Councillor Robinson.
Abstain.
Councillor Roughhead.
4.
Councillor Sanderson.
4.
Councillor Seymour. Councillor Sharp.
Abstain.
Councillor Simpson.
Against.
Councillor Stowe.
4.
Councillor Stewart.
4.
Councillor Swinburne.
4.
Councillor Swithenbank.
Against.
Councillor Thorne.
4.
Councillor Towns.
4.
Councillor Wallace.
Abstain.
Councillor Watson.
4.
Councillor Wearmouth.
4.
Councillor Webb.
Against.
Councillor Wilson.
Against.
Thank you, members.
We'll just add up.
Those in favour, 31. Those against, 26. Abstentions.
Right. So it's carried 31 for, 26 against and 6 abstentions. Right, thank you. Let's move on. It's getting dark. Item 8, we go to page 49 and we approve and consider the minutes of the following committees. 1. Family and Children's Services. Councillor Renner. No, who's doing it? Yes. Councillor Swinburne.
I wasn't present, Chair.
Yes, I realise now.
Thank you, Chair. I present the minutes of the Family and Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee for Thursday, 8th of November 2018. I would just like to draw the Council's attention to a couple of points from this committee and just like to highlight the update on academic outcomes where in respect of the new key measures the significant improvement has been made from where previously the Council lay at 121st in the tables, and we've now improved to 91st, which is a good improvement, but we've actually still got a long way to go and we will achieve a lot better. Also the Schools Capital Programme, where we're looking at an investment of £42.9 million over 70 projects, which actually bucks the trends of many councils. But also where out of this committee, we formed a task and finish group with regard to focus on exclusions across the authority, which was a highlight, was highlighted last year by a visit from a Member of Parliament as well, and we've already started that.
Okay. Councillor Pidcock.
Question, if I may. And it is about the task and finish group. It is about the task and finish group. It's well known that the majority of exclusions are from academies. And I'd like to know how you're going to get the information from academies, the proper information from academies, so that we can, you can do the task and finish group as well as you can. And the second little question is, when do we get the minutes of the meeting that took place of the Family and Children's Overview and Scrutiny Committee, where they cut the youth service? When do those minutes come to us?
Who wants to answer?
Yeah, Chair, can I come in on the 2 points there? If I can take the first point, which was around where do we get the information from. We've already had meetings with head teachers, including from name and shame them, Blythe Academy, which is one of the worst performing in terms of exclusions. We've already had that, and we have a relationship now with Regional Schools Commissioner, and of course we know about our own maintained schools, so we are very confident that we will get that detailed piece of work. And I would point out that on the task and finish group, that is a cross-party group, and it is really important that we all take ownership of what is a completely unacceptable position for any school to be using exclusions as a means of trying to prime their performance. So absolutely on that one. And in terms of when you'll get the minutes, well, you'll be circulated the minutes when the minutes are ready. But what I can tell you is there ain't been a cut to youth service. I am going to tell you absolutely clearly that youth services in Northumberland are preserved. Most of the local authorities in this area, Labour-run authorities, have slashed, decimated or ended their youth service. Our frontline youth service is protected and preserved. Where we've made savings, it's on management level. And I am absolutely delighted that our youth service will be targeted into Blythe, into Ashington, into all of those hotspot areas, including Prudhoe. I always name-check my good colleague there, Councillor Stewart. But absolutely, our youth service will be targeted like a laser beam on those communities. And in actual fact, I don't know if you stayed for the full facts meeting, Councillor Pidcock, but what I can tell you is there was overwhelming support for our youth service offer, protected, preserved under this administration.
You paid me, Chair, so I can speak, can I?
Yeah, you did.
Because I did go to the meeting, and I did attend the full part where you discussed the youth service. The members said they're taking away the levels and levels of management. There are no levels and levels of management in Northumberland. It's down to the bone. And the people who have been affected are young people, the most vulnerable young people, and it's yet again another cut for the poorest in our community.
Do you want to respond?
Chair, I will respond. The scrutiny committee was very clear, and the minutes and the report were very clear. The savings that we've made on management level of frontline service will be targeted like a laser beam on those communities, including those in Blythe, Ashington and around our county. It's a flexible service, and it's one I'm delighted that we're still preserving and protecting.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you very much. There was just one question I'd like to have. Could you possibly look at the exclusions of the young children, which they seem to go round and round? So we've had a history in the West area where you've had 2 children who have been excluded, and that's counted as 6 exclusions, and in fact it's just 1 child. So can you have a look at that, because there is fundamentally a problem with how you address that, the future of that child. Never mind the exclusion. It's the future of that child which is so important.
Okay, noted. Right, next, I can't see any more hands. The next meeting is the Communities in Place Overview and Scrutiny. Councillor Reid, page 57.
I am, there we are, you see. Thanks, Bernard. move the minutes of the Community in Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 5th of December 2018, starting at 2 o'clock.
Right, Councillor Carty.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, these minutes cannot be passed and agreed because they're incorrect. They're so watered down, it doesn't actually give you the salient facts that came out in that meeting. Very important facts and points, in fact. First of all, there was no mention of the debate regarding the current policy the council has in relation to car parking charges. The policy said that these can only be implemented if the town or the parish council requests car parking charges. This hasn't happened. Number two, no mention of how much the enforcement costs and the implementation costs of this car parking issue, costs of administration, collect monies and everything, doesn't equate. It's not even mentioned. Number three, no mention of the displacement of cars when cars won't pay to park in the car park, they'll park in people's housing estates. No mention about the volunteers and the lifeguards and the Blythe Battery people who give their time free. No mention of the beach hut users in Blythe who pay for rent a beach hut per year. They will then have a 100% increase in monies they have to pay out by having to pay car parking charges. You also kept saying during the question time, during the meeting, that you would be listening to people, but you're not listening to people because you haven't actually mentioned it. Now, there's been petitions and everything gone forward. Residents have requested this. Residents don't want car parking charges. These petitions need to go to the area committees and the petitions committee, right? Really, in a sense, what you've done is you've taken out the most important party areas that you are in fact going against council policy by trying to implement these charges. Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Yeah.
Then I've got Councillor Dunn after Councillor Reid.
Yeah, the minutes that are here fairly reflect what happened in the meeting. The things that Councillor Carty brought up are things that weren't mentioned. Some of them weren't mentioned at the meeting, and certainly, if you look on page 61, the very top 9 in brackets policy is where I pointed out that it was against council policy. Now, it was mentioned. Whether the administration has done anything about it or not has got nothing to do with the accuracy of the minute. And also, in my remarks on page 60, you will find there that I've mentioned about people parking in inappropriate places. So you might not like what the administration are doing about imposing car parking charges, but the minutes of the meeting are correct.
All right, Councillor Dunn.
I'd just like to point out that the minutes are incorrect in a small way in stating on page 60, number 7, and they've got me down as being the ward member for Cresswell. Well, I'm not. So that's incorrect for that. But the comments that are made about Cresswell and regarding my own disagreement with the policy still stand, and they are correct. Thank you.
Was that you, Grant?
Yes, I'd just like to clarify from some issues on what's been said today, particularly surrounding the policy remark from Councillor Reid there. The policy of the council included a full consultation with town and parish councils right across the county. They had the choice of whether cars were parked for free in their parishes or not. Some chose to retain that for management of traffic purposes. One of those councils has had quite hefty publicity in the newspapers in the north and central Northumberland surrounding sea houses, and it's the fact that its charges have gone up considerably, and that the people are asking the town council to intervene and not have their charges put up. In fact, they'd like to go for free parking, the same as other towns. The problem you've got with this is, to do what you've done, you need to repeal the policy of the council, because it's a council policy to agree, if your town or parish does not wish to have charges, not to put charges on. You've come with this taxation of motorist charging, country parks, etc. There's no necessity for it. In 2013, we rolled out this policy. We put it out to every town and parish council. They made their choice. And for the 2014 budget, we increased the level of council tax. Now, that increase in level of council tax was to roll in the maintenance and the improvement of car parks county-wide. It was part of the scheme. So you're breaking a policy by putting charges on places where town councils do not want those charges, and you're actually forgetting that you've already taxed the public on behalf of the council, on behalf of this organisation, to pay to maintain those car parks. So this policy is against all policies of the council, and there isn't a new policy within here either. So I think you need to have another think about this, because if you break the policy of the council, anyone who's fined should be able to get their money back.
Councillor Patterson. I'll come back to you at the end.
I think there's a word missing under item 6. It says Councillor Patterson confirmed that was in her ward that residents had expressed to her they were unhappy at proposals to introduce parking charges. Craster has always had parking charges, so it should have been introduced increased parking charges.
Can we note that? Right, who we got? Councillor Renner Thompson, and then Councillor Swithenbank, and Councillor Oliver. I'll bring you in at the end.
Thank you, Kevin. Can I just clarify to Councillor Davey, I'm the councillor for Sea Houses and was at the Sea Houses Parish Council meeting when this was discussed, and they were not against parking charges, as the parking charges already apply in Sea Houses, and the Sea Houses Harbour Commissioners already charge on their land, hence the Parish Council were happy to keep the charges. They had some concerns about the policy which have been fed back into the consultation.
Councillor Spinbank.
Well, to move away from protocol and the rest of it, I like to talk to people in the street when the council's doing something, catch them unawares. And I was walking round Bowlam Lake Country Park, and several people coming the other way. Most of them were elderly, and I said, could I ask you a question? What do you think of parking charges? I wish Councillor Sanson could have been with me. I'm not sure I could have protected him from the ire that was expressed. But some of the people, it was interesting, were telling me how where they live, there is literally nowhere to walk. And they go there regularly and do a couple of turns around the lake. And that this would have quite an impact on them. And I'm old, and they were even older than me. And in Blythe, I will confess, I was one of those evil Labour people standing in the marketplace on a cold Saturday morning with a petition. Probably you think I deserve that. It was cold. But I've been at the game a long time, as I bore people by saying. But I have never in Blythe seen such an expression of outrage at times with these suggestions regarding parking in some car parks has always been free. So on behalf of all those people I spoke to, and it's many, can there an assurance really, I'm looking at the portfolio holder, that the undertaking to take cognizance of the petitions, that it is meant in good faith, because honestly, I've never experienced anything like it for people wanting to sign, queuing up to sign, and having an awful lot to say. Because that assurance really from the portfolio holder that the expressions expressed by all those people who signed, and I was not twisting their arm, that he will take due cognizance of the strength of feeling on this matter.
Councillor Oliver and then Councillor Reid to sum up.
I'd just like to sort of pick up on a point. I mean, Councillor Renner-Thompson's already made the point that the exact opposite of what Councillor Daly said was in fact true about Sea Houses Parish Council. I'd also point out that he said that the council had raised council tax to pay for car parks. I think he should know, as the ex-Labour leader, that actually you're not allocating a raise in car park council tax to a specific issue. Costs were raising right across. So I think that's not correct either. But living in the West and being a member in the West, we've seen no investment in our car parks, and we've nothing has progressed until just before the election, and then there was a sort of promise of lots of car parks dropping out of the sky all over the county, but nothing was actually delivered during the administration. And what we're doing now is actually delivering real car parking improvements.
Right, Councillor Carty, did you want to come in? Because I was going to get Councillor Reid to sum up, because I need to move on. We'll hear this and then we'll...
I just want to come back in on something before. You're raising the council tax by cutting the county. Sorry, you're taking a cut in the council tax, which we discussed before. You're actually now going to try and charge for car parking. On the news this morning, you claimed that you're losing £500,000 by not charging for car parking, right? Parking charges on Blythe Beach have never been there for over 40 years. You've obviously taken that into account, so your sums are wrong anyway, right? And the other thing is, I'm really pleased you've won that award for tourism, but you're not going to win it next year if you put these charges on it. Thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
Well, with the best will in the world, I don't want to listen to Councillor Davey giving me any advice about financial matters. We are trying to run a council of improving services. When I took on this portfolio, I determined that our fantastic staff, our men and women on the front line, would be rewarded, that they would be noticed and they would be thanked for the work that they do. And that's what we've done. And I'm hugely proud of what we do every day on our frontline services. Now, I'm not going to cut those in order to pay for the enormous and exciting expansion program of car parking spaces, which the people have told you. They told us when we came in that our towns so badly needed. We spent a year talking to the town and parish councils about car parking, and we determined that we would act and build this huge, exciting program of new car parks. Not just that, but also to spend a lot more money in our country parks and a lot more money in our play areas. That has to be paid for. And I'm not going to cut frontline services, and I'm not going to borrow money like your administration did, and therefore end up with a cut in frontline services which would inevitably follow. So what we've done is we put forward our ideas about how to fairly and reasonably meet the cost of this expansion program whilst maintaining our frontline services as we all want them to be. I said at the beginning that we would listen to what people said, and I will listen to what people say when they say it reasonably and fairly and not use it as a party political horse to ride on. So those members, well, you laugh, those members who have come to me, and I've had many meetings with face-to-face meetings with members of all parties, and those ones that have come to me and explained the situation fairly and reasonably, I will listen and have listened. And so when we come forward with our proposals, you will see that we have listened. But I will not be lectured on by people telling me how to run frontline services when all we saw was a deterioration in frontline services in the last administration. We want our men and women to feel proud and be thanked for the work they do, and that's what we are going to do every day, every month and every year while we are in power. And we will make sure that happens.
Councillor Reid. Not the pantomime season, yeah.
Oh, no,
they're all behind you.
Anyway, so much for commenting on the accuracy of the minute. All I would say is I apologise to the councillors who actually told me that there's actually things wrong with the wards that we're in and a word missing. I apologise for that. I missed it when I sent it, so I shall try not to do that again. And as far as all of the rest of the comments are concerned, really all of that is about the budget debate, which is going to be whenever it is. What is written here is what happened. You mightn't like it, but it is what happened. You mightn't like car parking charges. You mightn't like the increase in the annual car parking pass, but this is what was said. And as far as the member who said they were collecting signatures in a marketplace, I hope it wasn't Blythe Marketplace, because you're not allowed to have political activity on Blythe Marketplace. It's actually banned. So well, you should have said that. Anyway, so the minutes are right. I'm glad I was able to get people to engage and have an argument about the content of it, but nevertheless, the minutes are right, apart from those two exceptions. Thank you.
Can we agree the minutes? Move on to the next. It is Health and Wellbeing Overview and Scrutiny. Councillor Watson, held on the 6th of November.
I'd like to propose the meeting that held on the 6th of November of the Health and Wellbeing Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I have no comments. The minutes are very clear and precise.
Councillor Dungworth. Hang on.
Sorry. They're so precise, they actually miss out something really important. Under item 43.1, which was the charges to care and support services, what isn't contained in there, it reads very factually about the information we were given, which is true, but it is an overview and scrutiny committee, and we did question and challenge some of that, and we did make it very plain in that meeting that, again, whilst 50% a week extra for most of us might be manageable, although even for me that would be a struggle, for a lot of people it's going to cause real hardship, and that isn't reflected here, that we acknowledge as a council that all of these things add to people's hardship, that they will make life more difficult for people. And I don't want another lecture about how it's all the fault of the last administration. The fact that you need to make £36 million worth of cuts and make changes to things like this and things like the council tax rebate is because of Conservative government policy and the reduction in grants to local government. And the very fact that it is a nationwide problem and Conservative councils are screeching up and down the country about being able to make their budgets proves that point. The last administration here did not run Northampton Council. It didn't run the shires in the South East. So this is about Conservative policy, your party's government policy. Let's make no mistakes about it.
Right, anybody else on these minutes? No, I can't see. Can we agree them? Right, Health and Wellbeing Board, presented by me on the 11th of October. Anybody, anything there? Can't see anybody. Health and Wellbeing, again, on the 15th of November. Safeguarding, anybody? Move them. Okay. Audit Committee, Councillor Hill.
Thank you. I present the minutes of the Audit Committee held on the 28th of November, as set out on page 83 to 92. The only thing I would comment is that the report on the parish and town council sector sparked a lively debate both within the meeting and afterwards. And there's been some challenges and further questions, I say outside the committee and indeed the authority on issues, for example, where you have a town or parish council that puts in a preset request and there's issues about that instruction, whether they've been reckless or even acting lawfully. So that did prompt some interesting debate. So I present these minutes.
Councillor Dungworth.
Thank you. It is in relation to that item actually on the agenda, and particularly the third paragraph. where it says that the chair stated that many parish councils were scarcely acting legally and gave examples of conflict situations. I am concerned that in the agenda of the county council we have got a statement like that without any backing information about what that's about. As it says somewhere else, we work very hard to try and have good relationship with our town and parish councils, and actually some of the things that are delivered couldn't be delivered without working in partnership with them. And that statement is I can't say the word, so I'm not even going to try it. That statement, I think, puts in jeopardy that, and I think it also brings this council into disrepute. You cannot make statements like that in a public document and not back them up with exactly what you're talking about and where the evidence is for that. And I look forward to getting that evidence here in this meeting and it being recorded.
Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I raised a point, and it's an issue of interest to me. I've raised this question several times in this forum, and that is that there are town and parish councils up and down the country, that are experiencing a lot of problems, that are experiencing a lot of turmoil, that there is often some degree of wrongdoing, some serious issues about governance across the country. And if you were there, I did talk about some specific examples. For example, what's happening in Ledbury Town Council, Rothbury Parish Council that's had a public interest report. So I did give specific examples. And the fact is, it is the case that there's numerous problems. And every day I had somebody, it makes me sound really interesting, I had somebody from Tewkesbury on to me today talking about all the problems that's happening in their council. So if somebody's giving an opinion that there's a general problem in the sector, not accusing anyone specifically of anything that could be seen as defamatory, what is the problem? And for those town and parish councils or individuals that get jumpy when I make statements like that, I'm like, that's interesting, you put your hand up. I'll have a little look into what you're up to.
Councillor Dungworth, I'll let you come back and I'll go to Councillor Heppel.
I'm sorry, I thought this meeting was going so well today. Those remarks are totally out of order, and this council meeting is not for that. What we obviously have here is the chair's personal opinions recorded as a matter of fact from this council. And I would suggest we have a real problem if we are recording an individual's personal views rather than a council's position in our minutes. And I would ask that the minutes of this are reviewed and brought back, because seriously, we've got a really big problem here.
Councillor Heppel?
You have, sorry, I don't have.
Let's take Councillor Heppel and then we'll let the chairman.
Thanks, Chair. It's on the same paragraph, actually, and it references a named person, who I believe was the complainant. I just wonder whether that's a data protection breach.
Go on, Councillor Hill, and then let's move on.
Thank you. The individual asked for that to be circulated and their name. I know the Labour Party and Corbyn's Labour Party are big on censorship, but if people can't say, in my opinion, there are a lot of problems in the town and parish council sector, just Google it and you'll see the problems happening up and down the country. To be perfectly honest, you're saying in your opinion there's austerity. Listen, no, hang on a minute. Let's be clear. You lot.
Right, okay.
No, can I just finish my point? You lot are saying things like, because of the Conservative government there's austerity. You're perfectly entitled to say that. You can minute that. I mean, what's wrong with you? I mean, why has this made you get jumpy? Why don't you allow freedom of speech?
Right, let's move on.
Slander is not if you're saying there's problems in the sector. As a whole, there's problems in the sector. I give some specific examples, or specific problems attached to some councils. Ledbury, Rothbury, and there's plenty more.
Right, Councillor Hill,
and I will be looking at that council.
I've got Councillor Margaret Richards at the back. Wait for the microphone, please.
Chair.
I do not believe that this council chamber is for this kind of roundheism. Surely to goodness you can take a hold.
Right, let's move on. Councillor Ruffett.
As chair of the Town and Parish Liaison Working Group, I got consulted with the report that the Audit Committee were doing, and my understanding of it that audit were looking more into the relationship between the Town and Parish Council sector and the County Council in terms of like the Section 1, council tax precepts, things like that. It wasn't really specifically accusing any specific parish council within our authority of being corrupt or anything like that. And obviously reading the minutes it's just a reflection of the meeting of what happened and what's said, and obviously it looks like people have presented reports, members and across the board have commented on different issues. My only niggle is just a personal one. It's in the paragraph on page 91. It says town and parish councils. Obviously all local councils are parish councils, but if we're saying town and parish, it would be good if we included the term town, parish and community councils, because we do have one community council in Northumberland, and I think we should just be inclusive of that.
No, right, come on, I need to get on with the meeting.
Okay.
Right, can we agree those minutes and move on? Right, delegated decisions 93 to 94. This is about the Acomb neighbourhood plan. Can we agree that? Right, now then we move to motions. Motion number 1, Councillor Davey. I know you weren't listening, but...
Two seconds. Tidying myself up for the telly, you know.
With a tie.
I'm so pleased to be. This is a lovely tie from Zambia. It's what all the most fashionable people in Africa are wearing at this moment in time.
I've been to Zambia.
We should just bring a lovely little bright bit of colour to this meeting today, because there's so many drab, grey looking folk over here. You know, you've got to expect it.
Come on. Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm very, very pleased to be promoting this motion today here in the town of Morpeth. Morpeth's a gateway to the railway lines here in Northumberland. We only have 3 main line stations, and this is the largest one. And it's a very big issue here in the town. The town has a supporters group for rail users, which there are a very, very active group. And I'm sure on the few things that I've seen out on, for all I'm not a big reader like Councillor Oliver of some of the stuff on social media, they seem to be out there trying to support the retention of guards and conductors on trains. Now, I don't think I need to read the motion out because it's there before you, but one of the things I will have to raise is the fact that we've had a recent accident the last couple of days on the Carlisle to Newcastle line, and the guard, of course, has the job of actually stopping the other trains getting onto the line while they're there, and all of the sort of safety aspects of a very, very nasty accident where a taxi was struck by a train. But guards on trains and conductors on trains don't just do the things that are in this motion. The things that are in the motion are the heavy things that are kind of in the public eye and have been taken to a government meeting. They've had a meeting in Parliament about this in the past. The RNT had a early day motion put forward. What they have is that they have a major list of competencies. That major list of competencies makes guards some of the most trained people for health and safety, for public safety, and for lots of other safety issues surrounding the railway. It puts it, that's what their job is. They're very, very clever and well-trained people. The removal of guards from the trains, of course, sort of damages people's use of the trains in different ways, particularly as we're now aware that only in the northern region, only around half the stations are manned. So if I was a wheelchair user or a disabled person or an older person, and I am getting older, an older person who was very, very slow at getting on the trains, and we had a driver-only train and they kind of missed them because the door was open or something like that, we could end up with a very, very serious accident caused through that type of thing. So guards are essential to do the safety on platforms of unmanned stations, and there's quite a lot of them in Northumberland, unmanned stations. The other issues surrounding this is that it's about the actual motion is about for us, it's about trying to make sure that we all get, as real users, a regular train service in Northumberland. Currently, the rail service in Northumberland is affected by the industrial action of the RMT. I've got to say I personally support that industrial action because no one seems to be moving anywhere to do anything to try to end the actual problem there. Our motion today asks this council to get involved, to write to the people and talk to the people involved in railways and try to get guards and conductors retained on trains. I'm lucky I've got daughters, but my daughters do a lot of travelling on trains. I've got to say they don't like travelling on trains without conductors and guards on, because it's particularly Saturday evenings, you know, or coming back. One lives in Birmingham, one's just come back up from Manchester, you know, coming back up from Manchester or Birmingham in the night evening time, and there's no one there. There's some funny people get on trains, as we've seen from stabbings on the Southern Rail network this recent weeks, and all of those type of things. We have a lot of people as a county council to look after, and this is one of the ways to look after them. I'm asking here today to support this motion. The motion's about telling people that we need safe activity on our rail network. Thank you, Chair.
Is there a seconder?
Chair, just in my other role, my other life as a trade union branch secretary in the NHS Mental Health Trust, where I've got 4,500 members, by the way. There's been quite a few concerns coming to me from young members, disabled members and retired members about the health and safety, about not having guards or conductors on the train. Young members, obviously in dark nights, quiet stations, it's nice to have somebody there in the train that is in charge of the train as well as the driver. And the disabled, that they get a lot of help with their disability, their mobility sometimes, and that would go. Sometimes they even wait a little bit longer because of their mobility before the train leaves. So I would just like to fully support the motion and hope everybody in the chamber fully supports it as well. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Reid.
Yes, Chair, I'd like to move an amendment. Basically, the preamble's fine, but the last paragraph, I've written it, so you'll just have to bear with me, okay? So, what my amendment is council therefore instructs the chief executive to write to the North East LEP, both combined authorities, Transport for the North, all Northumberland MPs, Lords Shipley and Beath, Baroness Maddock, the chief executive and chair of Northern Rail, to articulate our opposition to any proposal to remove on-board guards and conductors for the reasons set out in the motion. Council also instructs the chief executive to write to the DFT and relevant government ministers to lobby for on-board conductors and guards to be retained within any train service specification issued for tender in the North East, and a copy of all correspondence be shared with all members as and when it is written or received by the chief executive. Also, report on progress on the issue to be included on every council agenda until such time as the majority of councillors present in the council meeting vote not to receive more updates. And the reason I move that is because there is always worthy motions on these agendas, and we never see the outcome of any of them. And we are proud of the council we work for. We are proud of the people that we represent, and all I want is just the actions taken from these motions to be received back here, so we can comment and we can see who's actually responded to these letters.
Councillor Rigby. You second, that's seconded. Councillor Davey, you wanted to come back?
Yes, I'd like to see that For all that we had the list of posh names that ate Christmas dinner with Councillor Reid, we'd love to accept these amendments. We think it's a very good and wholesome amendment to the motion.
Councillor Webb and then Councillor Wearmouth.
Thanks. I used to work on the railway. Well, I'll put it another way. I used to tend the railway. I wasn't on that side. I was on the engineering. But guards on trains are essential. If anything happens on the train, he's the communication to the board or to the driver. If somebody takes ill in the carriages, he could pass this information on. They could get help for the next station. If there's any antisocial behaviour, he could contact the police. But most importantly is the aspect of people elderly and disabled getting off the train. What the guard does, has a platform on there, a ramp, what they put down, he puts it down for the disabled. He also gets off the train, checks the doors, that everybody's clear the doors before he gets back on. If the driver's in the front, he hasn't got a clue what's happening down there. There could be a disabled or an elderly person stuck in a door. They wouldn't have a clue. So I think it's essential that we back this and keep guards on trains. Thank you.
Councillor Wearmouth. Okay, we're on the amendment, but I gather that you're happy to take the amendment. Hang on.
I wonder if you want to tell us whether the meeting in general is happy with the amendment so that you can discuss that. Or
Is the meeting? Are we happy that the amendment is part of?
is there any opposition?
So you're happy with the amendment as but okay, I can move forward.
Thank you, Chair, and of course it's he or she in terms of guards, because there's some fantastic ladies who've worked on the trains where I've been on them. I just wanted to clarify something, if I may, because when I saw this motion come in, I contacted Northern Rail and got the following reply, which was, my understanding was that we didn't have and weren't ever going to have only driver-only trains in Northumberland. And what Northern Rail came back with was as follows. So it is correct that Rail North and the DFT have now supported having a second person on every train to look after customer needs. This includes customer assistance, luggage handling, tickets, timetable information, and I think all the other things that are mentioned in your motion. They go on to say that we have invited the RMT to talk through ACAS and also asked for an independent review to be done through ACAS to further understand the reasons why the RMT with suspending all strike actions whilst ACAS work through the detail. They have refused the latter and the former were unsuccessful, unfortunately. And if you were standing on Morpeth Station, and if you were talking to people that were using our fantastic gateway to our town here in our county, you would find that the number one thing that they're really irritated with at the moment is the strikes that have been called by the RMT. And that needs to stop. And it has to stop. And you see, the reason that you come up with wanting this motion in place, Councillor, is the lack of someone else on the train to provide all of those things that you identify in this motion. And yet it looks very much to me, from the answers that I've had and the reassurance that I had, that that's going to happen. And so I can't really support the amendment, because I think that we should, as a council, have a further amendment which would say that we entirely support the position of Rail North and the DFT of having a second person on the trains, and that we call on the unions to end the strike action, which is bringing misery to many, many people in our area. So it's got to stop. This council is putting backing behind the Northumberland line, getting trains back in. We've protected in the local plan that we'll get to vote on in a little while on the path between Ashington and the East Coast Main Line. We've got and been lobbying for additional trains in terms of Transpennine stops. We're doing all the things that we need to protect rail users. Will you do the same?
Right, Carl, I've got two. Who? Yeah, go on. Councillor Flux. Then I've got Councillor Swithenbank.
I'm just asking a point of order really on the
Councillor Reid mentioned about this going on every single agenda until we get an answer. I remember some of the meetings we've had here, we've had, been pulled back to do things last minute, like, for example, Norfolk Tyne. Would it be really appropriate for us to call a meeting, like we had that there just after another meeting, and have it on the agenda? It seemed to be a lot of duplication, a lot of time, and if it wasn't on there, would people ask the question, why isn't it on there, even though it might be coming up? I understand the sentiment you're saying there, but I think the practicalities of that are somewhat difficult.
Right. Councillor Swithenbank and then Councillor Wilson.
If the last suggestion was accepted as an amendment, I would suggest it becomes a pious motion, because it does not support or enhance the original motion, but attempts to reverse it. That, in my opinion, is a pious motion.
Councillor Wilson, at the back, Nicola.
See, I've been disabled for 4 years now. I'm just disabled. And I use the train quite a bit to see my son, who lives in Carlisle, and my family in Edinburgh. And 25 times I've been this year, I've had one help of a guard. And it was of a young lassie coming back from Carlisle. There's been nobody to help us on the trains, Virgin or whoever it was. And it's been my wife or a member of the public has helped us to get off and get on. And that's true. If we get rid of these guards, who else is going to be like that? The worst people than me is going to be off me, I tell you. It's a disgrace if we get rid of these guards and the helpmate. Simple as that.
Councillor Dunworth.
Yeah, really, what I wanted to say was what I liked about the amendment to the motion is that it talks about the future as well. And it's very well to say this is happening at this exact time, but as we move into the combined authority and have, with others, a greater involvement in transport, and as we're putting out tenders to different people potentially, I would like to see it written in there that all train services in our area have a guard on them.
Councillor Bourne.
I'd just like to, obviously this motion has been put forward, and many councillors across the room have said how important guards and the second people are on trains, and I think we all agree on that. And I can understand why the proposer's put the motion in the way he has. He's probably been given the words by the RMT. But we now have an answer in writing from Northern Rail, making it clear that the central thing they're asking for is already there. They've already agreed that second person is going to be on the train, and that's part of their tender. That's part of their tender to government for the franchise. So what we're getting is people here quite rightly saying yes, we need second people on trains. Northern Rail in writing there that can probably be. I'm sure that can be circulated, saying yes, we agree. A second person will be on the train. So why are we then proceeding with this motion now? I'm sure, on reflection, the proposer didn't have this information when he put this in. Now he has the information from Councillor Weymouth. I'm sure he would be doing the sensible thing with that to withdraw his motion. Because, we understand the sentiment that brought it forward, but things have changed in the meantime, and now we should recognise that, congratulate, even if it is a pious motion, Northern Rail for acting on the sentiments that we all agree on, and move on. Thank you.
Right, where do we go with this? We've had some amendments and an amendment. Well, I went on the metro the other day and there wasn't any guards on there, so do we include them? It's just the same. It's the same. Go on and Grant, let's sum up. I need to get... You have an amendment. Hang on, Grant, hang on. Grant.
Chairman, if you've accepted my amendment, then
right. No, he's not.
Can I make a point of order then? I need to make a point of order, Chair, about the motion.
Oh, come on, please. I can take legal advice here.
Chairman, does anybody want to give me a microphone?
Depends what you're going to say.
I'll not sing. Chairman, you have an amendment which has been seconded by Councillor Rickerby. You must vote on that amendment before you move on.
That's fine. Then
However,
I'd like to be a speaker on this.
However, can I just say that, contrary to what I think Councillor Reid's expectation is, the mover of an amendment does not have a right of reply at the end of the debate. So therefore, I would suggest, if you're content that discussion has been significant and extensive, that you can vote on the amendment. But Councillor Reid might wish to remind members of the detail of that amendment. I don't know. Chairman, that's a matter for you.
You struggled in the first time, so...
Chair, I need to come back in though. I'll tell you why, before this amendment's moved, because a statement has been made about Northern Rail, and I need to explain why that is not in completely the picture. There's a bigger picture needs to be explained here.
Right, okay.
Can I come for 2 seconds?
Right, you've got 2 seconds.
Right. Councillor Hill has been reported in last week's newspaper in the North about wishing to see the train from Liverpool to Newcastle extended to Edinburgh Waverley. That was a quote from the paper last week. Now that train is on most of its route at the south part of it is not in Northern Rail territory. Therefore, they're different areas, different companies, and therefore it may not have a guard on those trains. And that's not just... That's not just
He's
that
making
train.
a point of
There's other
order,
trains
it's Northern
coming.
Rail.
Trains may be coming through areas where they don't need guards. Their destination may be here in Northumberland. And it's about making sure all trains have guards on, all conductors in the whole of the Northumberland.
It's on your motion that's saying Northern Rail. Right, we do have other business to come that is important, so I do want to get some progress. Right, Jeff, Councillor Reid, do you want to sum up? No?
I'm not summing up, I'm just reminding people about my amendment. Basic what my amendment does, it adds just a few more people into the people we're going to write to. It then goes on to say that in future we should just make certain that we all want guards and conductors in any franchise that's going out. And in the end, which is the bit that's most important to me, that, and I hope this will happen from now on with motions.
You were going to remind us of what you said, not sum up. You said don't sum up.
Well, I'm not. I'm just telling you. I don't want to read it out again. Do you want me to read it out again?
Yes.
No, he doesn't. There we are. And the other thing that's important to me is that the last bit of the thing that I've added is that we get reports back, because I'm sick and tired of people moving motions in this council and nothing ever happens. We'll never hear whatever happens again. This will make certain we do.
Right. Who now? Vote. Voting on the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment. Voting on the amendment. All those in favour, please show.
Chairman.
All those against?
No strikes.
Well,
I make that 25, Chairman.
Abstentions?
1, 2, 3, 4, Chairman.
So it's carried. The amendment is carried. So now we go back to...
You go back to the substantive motion as amended, Chairman.
All those in favour of... All those in favour of the substantive motion.
As amended.
As amended. Those in favour. As amended.
No strikes.
Make that 32, Chairman.
32. Those against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, Chairman.
Abstentions?
1, 2,
Right,
Chairman.
motion's carried. Okay, everyone will be, said you'd be written to, will be written to. Right, let's move on. Item 11, report of the Interim Executive Director of Place. Councillor Riddle.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I say anything, I want to make it very clear that this whole local plan process, I've approached it with an open mind, and that I'm interested to hear all your comments today, and I'll weigh them before coming to my decision on the vote. Having said that, you know, we have in front of us today what many of you said couldn't be done. We have, with a lot of work and a lot of help from officers, and I want to formally thank Joan and her team and the working group for getting us to this stage. We have a plan in front of you. In terms of the overall plan, as we've previously highlighted, the key things we want to address are the importance of the environment in Northumberland and the need to conserve it, the importance of Northumberland to the region and the national economy, the intrinsic links of our economy to neighbouring authorities, and our ageing population, the need to ensure prosperous and sustainable communities across this county. So some of the key things that I want to point out at this stage are that there will be no new housing allocations proposed for Greenbelt. Housing numbers are 17,700, which is a considerable reduction on the previous plan. The housing numbers are exactly the same as the first draft, which was last summer. They haven't changed, but the distribution across settlements has changed slightly to meet local needs. We're still requiring affordable housing on all new developments, but in line with government guidelines, targets will be variable in line with housing value in different areas of the county. So there's actually a map which has different areas on banded 10, 15, 25 and 30%. These are minimums. It doesn't mean that that's the maximum for those areas, just as a reassurance to you. We've also introduced measures to manage the proportion of second and holiday homes, and in line with the public health agenda and our ageing population, supported housing for the elderly is extremely important. As has been mentioned, I think, by Richard previously there, you know, the delivery of additional better paid and higher skilled jobs is key. And we have added a portfolio of high quality employment sites in the right locations which are attractive to the market to incentivize job creation. I think also was mentioned about the rail links. We've listened to the Northumberland Rail Users Group. So we've got safeguarding the existing mineral rail links between Ashington and the East Coast Rail Line. And the plan supports improvements to the East Coast Main Line and improvements to the strategic highways, including the dualling of the A1, as well as improvements to the county's gateways to international growth, the ports, Blythe and Berwick, and links with Newcastle Airport. We also want to support neighbouring areas and interconnected sites around the Blythe estuary, and of course the importance of Blythe and the new industries around there. In this version, we've also amended the economy section to recognise the continued importance of military-related activity as a source of employment. High-quality developments are very important to us, and we've added a new chapter on quality and place, and I think you'll see there's also the supplementary planning documents on highways and transportation and on design. So really, you know, in a very short period of time, I believe that we have a plan here that's truly fit to address the future housing and economic needs of Northumberland whilst respecting and protecting our beautiful county. And as a Cabinet member, the Cabinet are proposing that this plan is put to the next stage, which is a 6-week consultation period. But it is a consultation on the test of soundness and the fact that it's been positively prepared, justified, effective and consistent with national policy. Any technical questions will be answered by the officers.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just conscious of the fact, and I think it's important that I draw it to members' attention, your attention, Chair, that during Councillor Riddle's opening statement, Councillor Dale left the chamber for a short while. Now, we'll all appreciate that you'll all be aware that members in making a decision, any decision, but importantly, I think in relation to this particular issue, it's important that all members who intend to vote at the conclusion of the debate should have heard all of the debate, and that includes the opening statement. So if I could just ask the simple question of Councillor Dale, do you intend to vote at the end of the well, I do not wish to preclude, and the chair of the meeting do not wish to preclude you from voting, but can I suggest, with Councillor Riddle's agreement, that I noticed that he read from what I believe is a prepared statement, if he would be in agreement to provide you with that statement, part of it which you may not have heard or you will not have heard when you were absent from the chamber. If I could ask you to familiarise yourself with that statement so that you will have been seen and you will have heard all of that particular statement. And I would just counsel members against leaving the chamber at any point, but certainly during discussion of an item, because we will have that difficulty where a decision is taken where not all members are present but then continue to vote. Those decisions are eminently challengeable, and in something as delicate as this, we would not want to put the council in that position.
Point of order, yes?
I'm very, very conscious that this particular item is going to be watched very carefully by a lot of legally minded people who may be looking for any excuse to rule this as procedurally incorrect, or to even, dare I say it, bring the whole thing to judicial review. Therefore, I think the rules of the Constitution, I think, are clear. If a member does miss part of the debate, they are not allowed to vote unless there is a dispensation granted. But I think we have to be very careful in granting such a dispensation, whether or not that will be regarded as fair and reasonable. And therefore, I think we should ask the Chair to make a judgment on this, because the last thing we want is for any kind of use of any kind of ruse by any other party to try and undermine any decision we make today. And I agree with the legal service managers say that we have to be very careful. Therefore, anything that is potentially a breach of our standing orders, I think we have to be very carefully consider. Thank you.
Right, I'll pause for a moment while okay. Would that satisfy? John, can you read the first half of your statement again? All of it. Yes, can I double check? Has Councillor Richards left? Please, yeah. This is a big thing, and well, sometimes when I call a 5-minute break, it goes to 10:15, and some people don't want it. So,
right. Can I just clarify what you're actually wanting me to do? Because actually, what this was a press release that I'd done a while ago, and I've just read bits of it, basically. So, you know, it wasn't a prepared speech for today. I've just picked highlights out. So, when did you come back in, Councillor Dale? I wasn't
just
aware.
read the lot, John. Get on.
All of it, right? Okay. Right, well, I did mention...
Established for Councillor Gallagher.
Well, John? I'm sorry, Bernard. I've got to do everything correctly. And if you don't like it, then sorry. Right.
Okay, right. In terms of the overall plan, as we highlighted previously, some of the key things we were addressing are the importance of the environment in Northumberland, the need to conserve it, the importance of Northumberland to the region and national economy, the intrinsic value of our economy to neighbouring authorities, our ageing population, the need to ensure prosperous and sustainable communities across the county. There will be no new housing allocations proposed for Greenbelt. Housing numbers are now 17,700, which was lower than the previous plan. Housing numbers are exactly the same as in the first draft, which was of the last summer, although the distribution across settlements has changed slightly to meet local needs. We are still requiring affordable housing on all new developments, but in line with government guidance, targets will be variable in line with housing value in different areas of the county. The recommended affordable housing target for each value area ranges between 10 and 30%, and it's in bands on a map. Those are minimum starting levels, not maximums. We have also included measures to manage the proportion of second and holiday homes in our communities, and in line with the public health agenda and our ageing population, supported housing for elderly is extremely important. Our strategy for Northumberland is predicated on ambition to support delivery of additional, better paid and higher skilled jobs across our county. We've added a portfolio of high quality employment sites in the right locations which are attractive to the market to incentivise job creation. We've listened to those including the South East Northumberland Rail Users Group, and sought safeguarding existing mineral rail links between Ashington East Coast rail line. The plan supports improvements to the East Coast main line and improvements to the strategic highways, including the dualling of the A1, and as well as improvements to the county's gateways to international growth, which are the ports of Blyth and Berwick and the links to Newcastle International Airport. I mentioned about the interconnected sites around Blythe Estuary and the importance of the new low carbon and energy generation developments around there offshore. It also supports the development of high quality office accommodation, and we are recognising in this plan the importance of military related activity as a source of employment. High quality developments are very important to us, and we've added a new chapter on quality of place. Alongside this version of the plan, you'll also see the design guide supplementary planning documents for highways and transport, and design and delivery supplementary planning documents. I commended the plan as somewhere here, if you want us to read what I had before, as truly fit to address the future housing and economic needs of Northumberland whilst respecting and protecting our beautiful county. And I also thank the officers and the working group for all the work that they're doing in getting us this far. Thank you.
First time seemed shorter. Right, Councillor Bridget.
Members, I just want to touch on something before I go into the words that I've prepared today. It has been mentioned regarding affordable housing that it is a lower estimate and has the potential to increase. The one thing I've learnt serving on the planning committees over the years, whether it be on this council or Alnwick District Council, once it is in that policy document, if a developer can get away with delivering at that level, they will do so, and they will try and negotiate it down even further. Now I'll go on to what I wanted to say. I had prepared it for 5 minutes, but the Chief Legal Officer instructs me I have 10, so bear with me.
I might hurry you.
I'll be quick, I'll try. Members, in my 10 years on this council, I've seen many changes at this authority and in Northumberland, and we have had direct input into or influence over a great deal of them. We've debated quite vociferously sometimes and voted on many issues that directly impact the lives of our residents. Before us today, I believe, the most important policy document that has ever come before this council, and I don't make that claim lightly. The decision we take today and over the coming months will impact the residents of this county long after many of us have left the council. I've studied this document very carefully. I have examined the supplementary documents that support it, the policy and evidence-based papers that have allowed officers to reach their conclusions, and the minutes of the working group that have been involved in its revision and preparation since July 2017. Many of the policy statements contained within it are relatively straightforward, standard items that you would expect to see in a document such as this, replicated right across the country and in other local authority plans. But there is one policy in this document that stands out for me: affordable housing. Where to start? Perhaps by saying it differs somewhat from the policies of other local authorities that we are often compared to, such as Cornwall and Shropshire, and even some of the neighbouring authorities like South Lakeland, Copeland and Eden District Councils. My colleagues on the Northern Area Planning Committee will know how much of a keen supporter I am of the development of affordable housing and how passionate I can get regarding its delivery in the north of the county. Those of you here today that I served with on the former Alnwick District Council will know that my enthusiasm stems for affordable housing from the days of Alnwick District Council and the implementation and delivery of a 35% affordable housing target on all major developments. What I have read in these documents and what is before us today makes a mockery out of what we delivered in terms of affordable housing at the old Alnwick District Council and into the early days of this new authority. I've spent recent days reading cover to cover the technical background papers and supplementary planning documents that have been evidence to support the claim in my area and across vast swathes of Northumberland that a policy of 15% housing provision as opposed to the current 35% is acceptable. And in some cases, the affordable housing target is set to be as low as 10%. 10%. We will see 15% or lower in places such as Bellingham, Otterburn, Wooler, Amble, Berwick, Haltwhistle, Alnwick, Prudhoe, Bedlington, Blythe, Cramlington and Ashington, to name but a few, and also parts of Morpeth. So approving this policy today as it stands will mean any landowner who wishes to build more housing will be able to make more money by providing more market housing and less affordable. Who is going to lose out? Workers and their families in all our communities, and ultimately we will lose our economic vitality. Decent, affordable housing is important to families. It fulfills a basic human need for shelter, but it also contributes to the well-being of both parents and children. Children in stable housing do better in school and are less likely to experience disruption in their education due to unwanted moves. Affordable housing also frees up funds within families on tight budgets to spend on food and clothing. Affordable homes can attract and retain employees to a community, a great selling point and competitive advantage for employers. They also support the local workforce by enabling them to live close to their jobs. Shorter commutes allow workers to spend more time with their families, while the community benefits from reductions in traffic, congestion, air pollution, and expenditures on roads. In revitalising communities, the construction of affordable homes can also help to stimulate economic growth. This isn't rocket science. This is common sense building. This is common sense building strong, resilient communities and supporting our economy, not just for now, but for the future, with a healthy mix of housing options that includes market housing, a significant proportion of affordable to rent, to buy and shared ownership properties. And by significant proportion, I do not mean 15%. And make no mistake, if you think the new 10 or 15% percentage target will start with new applications, then you can think again. As we've already seen, and as we can continue to expect to see, a rush of revised applications through our planning committees in the coming weeks and months that will see landowners and developers reapplying for permission with revised affordable housing contributions based on the policies that are before us today. I know this to be a fact, as I am already aware of one potentially revised application that may be coming forward in my own division. In my division, the single largest private landowner in the county has a monopoly on all the potential developable land. Once this plan and policy is agreed, he will be required to deliver less affordable housing than has previously been required of his estate, dropping from 35% to 15%. And it won't just be the Rothbury area that will be affected. This will be the same for every other area of this county into which his 150,000 acre estate stretches. And not just this landowner, but the same will equally apply to every other landowner and developer in Northumberland. This is going to occur right across this county, except in those wealthy pockets of Ponteland and Hexhamshire that will still benefit from contributions that are as high as 30%. I have never risen in this chamber to speak on a policy that makes me so angry. I am actually ashamed of what has been put before us today in terms of affordable housing contributions. In my division alone, this will mean less of a chance of a roof over the head of the newly qualified teacher at our local school, our local community paramedic, our newly qualified worker at Nissan, or our newest agricultural or forestry worker and their families.
Thank you.
I have previously publicly advocated that Rothbury and other areas in Coquetdale that are not already in the national park might be better served by being within its boundaries, something we should probably discuss, Councillor Sanderson, after today. My residents would then immediately benefit from a 50% affordable housing contribution on developments of more than 11 homes, as is being advocated in the preferred options document of the National Park's own emerging local plan. If you can go back to your residents and be comfortable in telling them that on all future developments, and most probably some that have previously been agreed, they are going to be getting, in some cases, 10 and 15% affordable housing, and that is a good deal, then you are more capable politicians than I am. I will not even attempt to fool my residents into thinking that this is a good deal for them, as they already know that it is not. I wouldn't be able to look my residents in the face if I had supported a policy that so poorly represents their needs. I could not and will never vote in favour of a policy that allows rich landowners and developers to get away with contributing fewer affordable homes in our communities. This is a bad deal for my residents, and this is a bad deal for your residents. You are going to hear arguments from members of the administration and most probably members of the LDF working group, which will counteract my arguments and say that an enormous amount of work has gone into this development plan. It has. Well, I will stand by my comments, and I will go one step further, as is my right to do so, and state that on the record that it is my view that the affordable housing policy before us is a disgrace and a bad deal for the residents of Northumberland. This proposed policy and plan will deliver less affordable housing in Northumberland, and that will only benefit wealthy landowners and developers, not the residents who we are elected to serve. If you decide to support this policy of reduced affordable housing in Northumberland, and I am sure it will pass, be ready to respond when one of our residents, to whom we are accountable, I remind you, asks why so few affordable homes are being built and why we are not meeting demand. The residents of Northumberland should be fully aware and understand the implications of what is being passed here today. I will not be able to support this local plan, and I hope others will have the conviction to vote against it. I also feel it is important that those who are prepared to support it should be prepared to put their name to it, and for that reason, I would request a named vote on the matter.
Thank you, Stephen. Councillor Horncastle.
Where have you been for the last 16 months, Stephen?
Reading your minutes.
Where have you been? Any time over the last 16 months, you could have approached me, an officer or any member. You've never.
Hang on, one at a
Excuse me.
time.
I didn't interrupt you. You never approached me or any member of the LDF working group until now, when it's too late. All you want to do now is come along here and pontificate about how much Stephen Bridges knows about planning, which, when I've sat and listened to you, you seem to know very little. Because we on the LDF working group, the administration, and every councillor here, wants as much affordable housing as possible. And the way to do it is not to have a set 15% that we've got at the moment. The way to do it is to have a sliding scale, and it's up to the Councillor Dodd, he may ask Joan Sanderson to explain exactly how the sliding scale will actually get us more affordable housing, and we take our advice from professionals and not somebody who wants to come down from Rothby every once in a while to pontificate in front of cameras, pretend he's doing a good job, when you haven't. Because if you want to do a good job for the people in Rothby you're speaking about, you should have come and spoke to me any time over the last 16 months.
No. Were you? Right, who else wants to speak? Councillor Wilson. No bother.
You'll have all watched the news last night about the, sorry. You'll have all watched the news last night from Shelter. They need 4 million houses. 4 million in the whole country, not just Northumberland, but the whole country. There hasn't been one mention of social housing. Affordable housing, fine. But what is affordable housing? The top table can afford it. Us back here can't afford it, mate, but yes, good. How many people is that aware? I mean, we've had a problem in the West about retaining schools. If there was a social housing in over there, you'd keep your schools. It's as simple as that. But people over there, they can't afford affordable housing. But maybe able to afford social housing. I mean, there hasn't been one mention about social housing tonight. And that's a major thing in this country, mate.
Who? Right, who's Paul? Now I go to Peter.
Thanks very much. I've been asked to... Is that on? Yeah. I've been asked to respond to the technical issues that have been raised today, and I hope members will bear with me as I go through one or two points. I think the first thing I'd like to say is that officers are required, and the local planning authority is actually required to produce a development plan that is positively prepared. By that, it needs to meet the area's objectively assessed need, reflects the wider context and that of partners, neighbouring authorities, is consistent with achieving sustainable development, that the plan is justified and founded on an appropriate evidence base. It reflects an appropriate strategy that takes into account reasonable alternatives. It's effective, deliverable over the plan period and based on effective joint working, and crucially important, that it is consistent with national policy. The National Planning Policy Framework and the context within which planning decisions are taken has changed substantially over the recent years. The plan that is before you today has been prepared in the context of those requirements. It's been produced based on the evidence that's available to us now. It is a current evidence-based plan. It's benefited from critical friends' support and challenge. It's been reviewed by external consultants and by the Planning Advisory Service. It has been developed in consultation with the LDF working group. It has been through a full statutory consultation process through Regulation 18 phase. And as Councillor Riddle's mentioned, there have been a number of changes made to the plan to reflect those representations that have been made. It's also worth pointing out that we have had a planning inspectorate advisory visit at the beginning of December to review the policies within the draft plan. All of those measures have given assurance that the draft local plan that's before members today meets the test of soundness that the National Planning Policy Framework requires. In terms of the approach to affordable housing, again, just to re-emphasise that this is very much about an evidence-based approach. The evidence identifies a need for at least 151 additional affordable homes across Northumberland every year over the next 5 years, and the plan's been developed and the policies within the plan have been developed on the basis of those requirements. This equates to, in absolute terms, it equates to 17% of the plan's overall minimum housing requirement. If we were to apply a flat rate across the county, then that flat rate would be 17%. However, what the plan also recognises, and what the evidence base recognises, is that it is much more difficult for people to buy and acquire properties in some parts of the county than it is in other parts of the county. As a very large county, we have widely varying housing markets and housing values. And the advice that we have from Planning Inspectorate is that we need a variable approach in order to meet those variable needs and different conditions. So the planning advice through national policy is that the approach that we're taking in terms of a variable rate of affordability is the appropriate rate or approach to take. The policy isn't prohibitive. The affordable housing percentage requirements that we've outlined in the plan are minimums, and they don't prevent negotiation with developers to achieve a greater percentage of affordable housing where there's a clearly justified local evidence base and where there's local evidence of need. The National Planning Policy Framework requires that any planning applications for small-scale housing developments on unallocated rural exception sites outside of settlement boundaries and built-up areas are predominantly affordable housing, and that's one of the areas in which we can ensure that rural areas do actually benefit from more than the minimum policy that's been identified, or the minimum level rather that's been identified. As I say, we know what the affordable housing need actually is within the evidence base. We know that we are providing already, in terms of the housing needs across the county, more housing than the evidence requires for Northumberland, or demonstrates for Northumberland. There is also the need for us to make sure that the affordable housing provision that we ask for from developments is viable. One of the reasons that we end up with less than what we ask for in terms of affordable housing provision is that unfortunately developers will argue viability. By including specific minimum targets within the local plan policy, we can ensure that those minimums are maintained, so we don't drop between those minimum levels as a result of the fact that this is written into the local plan policy. So I just wanted to make sure that members were aware of those points. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
I won't comment on too many of the specifics or any of the specifics in the plan. This is a planning document, and there was a mention before about delivery, particularly about delivery of social housing. The delivery and the strategy of this council for delivery will actually come in about a month or two's time. And we've decided as an administration that actually we're going to build this new generation of council housing in Northumberland, and we'll be one of the first authorities in the whole of the UK to start a major programme of council house building, and we will come up with that strategy in absolute detail about how we're going to deliver that within the next 2 months. Thank you.
Councillor Reid. And then Councillor Campbell for the...
This is obviously shorter than I thought. All I really wanted to say was, regardless of what the rhetoric has been spoken so far, page 95, there's two things on there: agree to publish and agree to submit. So and then it's got to go through a whole lot of stuff before it actually becomes our local plan. Now, fair enough, it's taken this administration 2 years to do something they said would take 2 months, but that's by the by. But then again, my administration took 5 years to do nothing, so make of that what you will.
And then there was 4 years after you.
And then there was 4 years after that. Anyway, what we're doing is we're just agreeing that it's going to be published and it's going to go to examination, and then the examiner might, like they did in Durham, turn around and say, hey, your figures are wrong, start again. But this has taken so long to get to this point, stopping and starting, messing about, and I include my administration in that. We just have to get on with this. We've got to start building our defences against people who want to build stuff that we don't want. So can we just put our hands up and say we're quite happy that it's published and it's submitted? Because all of the rest of the argument, it's too late. let's just get on with this bit and see what the inspector says. Thank you.
Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. I thought I was going to have to wait until we had another war before we'd see some more council houses, and I'm grateful for the fact that that's going to happen. It's something that I'm passionate about, and when our government, my government, your government has failed for many, many years to deliver council houses. And I have to say that, you know, we had 13 years we could have built a lot, we didn't. Margaret Thatcher got rid of a lot of council houses, which was a big mistake. It's caused the problems that we've got today. I mean, when you look at, I always say that every child deserves a decent roof over their head, a decent school, and a decent health service. If they get that start in life, I think they're onto something. If they don't, they'll fail, because private landlords are ripping people off left, right and centre. And a lot of the problems in families today is because of the properties and the homes that they live in. It starts there. And I wait to see the first of the council houses that you're going to build. I don't know when it's going to start. The sooner the better, because the need out there is so great, so great. We just look at the numbers of people who's living on the streets. I've been to Brighton recently, I've been to Blackpool, and when I see young women in duvets, in doorways, it shocks me and horrifies me. As a nation, we should not have people sleeping on the streets in Britain. I have even suggested to Councillor Riddle today that perhaps some of the empty properties that we've got in Blythe, had for a long time that we can't let, that it might be an idea to offer them to homeless people. They can work out the ways of doing that, but I find it shocking that we have property standing empty for maybe 2 years because of the state of the property and the type of property it is, and then we've got people living on the streets. That's not acceptable. So I'll wait to see the first of our new council houses. I wish the leader could tell us when they might start. Thank you.
Councillor Dale. Come on.
Thank you very much. And I gather we're just here actually to look at the soundness of this report, and that's what I'm actually just going to speak on. There's one or two things I would like to raise an issue about, is the policies behind this. And I just wonder, when we've agreed through council all the relevant policies, so I'd like to know, for instance, when the economic strategy has been agreed through full council, and other housing policies that actually, I presume the housing policy would change, because obviously it hasn't been changed since the last one, when it went through the last local plan. So all these have to actually support, or the LDF, the new LDF, has to support these policies. So I would like I would like to know that that has been done, because I'd hate this new LDF to be pulled in because actually we haven't agreed the policies which support that. Certainly the economic strategy hasn't been agreed. It's agreed in draft, but hasn't been agreed fully. So I think we need to look at that. I do have also some issues about numbers of housing in the Hexham area in particular, which I would ask you to look at again, because there is an upturn, but for instance, the amount of allocation site is for 200, where you've got 500. So I'd like to know where you actually, the soundness behind that is where you're going to provide those houses. And once again, I mean, you have taken 37% of housing out of the last LDF. And I have concerns about the soundness of that, how we're going to meet the government policy of more housing, how we're going to support the Chamber of Commerce in the future development and economic growth in the North East, the LEP, and all the other people behind actually who are asking continually for economic growth. And once again, we said earlier on, we've got an ageing population. We have got an ageing population, but also on top of that, we've now got smaller communities who want to become self-sufficient. We know from Chorlton that they wanted more housing there because they want to keep their first school. And people are now very much more conscious about the fact that if they don't have more building in the rural villages, and I'm talking about more of the hinterland, then there won't be economic growth in their little area. There'll be no schools, there'll be no post office, there'll be no pub. There'll just be an ageing population. And people are very wary of that. People are actually coming to believe that actually they do need growth. Slaley wants growth. They've asked for growth. And I know other villages want growth. And I think that in all help to all these villages, we should actually agree to look at building up our smaller villages, because they actually understand now the issue. They didn't before, but they certainly do now. And they certainly do when they think about cutting this, cutting that, and no young people coming to live in their small villages. So I don't think that this actually represents their feelings and the soundness of actually the figures to bring in economic growth. And I would like you to go and have a look at these again before you publish them, because I feel very nervous that the figures don't add up, and I'm being quite honest about that, and also that the policies haven't been agreed. I could go on lots of other things, and I have taken a long, long time. I had a long time on a plane to read it all. And it does actually make you think further. But I have to say, I think the schools thing has brought the issue to the public that we need more building in the rural communities and not less.
Right, I was going to have Stephen come in now, but I'll take him now if you wanted to come in. But I do have other speakers.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll be brief because I was named. I communicated with officers during the development of the local plan under the Liberal administration, under the Labour administration, and under this administration. And if that is being challenged in this chamber, I'm happy to provide evidence of the telephone calls that I've had with officers, evidence of the emails that I've communicated with officers over an extended period of time. But what I will say is, I chose to come and address the chamber here today. I didn't make any personal attacks on any individual councillors. I chose to take the issue as a whole and address the whole chamber. It's just a shame that the chair of the LDF working group couldn't do the same.
Right, can I go to Nick Oliver? And then Bernard.
Thank you, Chair. We've listened to a very passionate speech about affordable housing that's clearly been carefully crafted for the press. This gives an impression that this administration is not interested in delivering affordable housing, and talked about 15% and 10%. The policy in the plan, HOU 16, I think HOU 6, shows 4 different categories, and they range from 10 to 30%. And it's interesting that the 25% range and the 30% range weren't mentioned in that speech. So I think what we, in the interest of balance, I think we just need to make it clear that we are really interested and we are really determined to deliver as much affordable housing as is possible. But we have to take a pragmatic policy that will work and that is deliverable. We're not interested in political, theoretical positioning. What we're interested in is pragmatic delivery on the ground.
Councillor Pidcock.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you. I stood here in July 2017, and the point I made then, which I can't hardly remember myself, so I don't expect anybody else to remember, was that the withdrawal of the local development plan was a monstrous act it was a monstrous act. We're back with it now, and I just want to make one very simple point, based on my experience working in the Citizens Advice Bureau. Affordable for the working class is based on the national minimum wage and the fact that if you spend more than your weekly or monthly income, more than 25% of your income, you will go into debt. 2 facts. The word affordable is subjective. Those 2 facts are objective. Unfortunately, for a person who is working on the national minimum wage, they have to work over 70 hours a week to be able to afford an affordable house. So the Labour Party has got a policy about building 1 million council houses, and that will be done
As soon as we take power, it is the policy of the Labour Party, properly costed and properly counted for, that will be done. So we're going to take the idea of affordable housing off the greedy developers, because they are not interested, as we all know, who've been in any way, shape or form involved in planning over the last 20 years, they are not interested in affordable housing. So that will be taken off them and it will be back to the people. Homes for people, owned by the people and lived in by the people, so greedy landlords will be no more.
Councillor Wearmouth.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I've no doubt that there'll be those in this chamber who live in a house knocked into another house and so on. But before leaving that to one side, one thing that we've been very passionate about when we've come into office was about creating affordable houses through Advanced Northumberland, and we're in the process of doing that. We've stopped buying expensive houses from odd places. Shall we say. And the policies that you've got in front of you are going to deliver these affordable houses, Councillor. They are. And you've heard Councillor Jackson say about how we're going to be building council houses in our county, and we'll be doing it a lot sooner than any Labour government will be, that's for sure. Thank you.
Right. I've still got more speakers. I'm going to go Councillor Robinson and Councillor Bourne.
I think that the term affordable is a complete misnomer. Yes. It should be based on the ability of local people to pay for it, not a supercharged market price of a property. So that's the first thing. Second thing, social housing, great, huge supporter, nice to hear it, following through on a promise you made over a year ago, great. I'm starting to wonder where you're going to build them. There's not much left. We're all rushing to put settlement boundaries around all our conurbations to stop the march of the developers, if you like. There's not that much room left now, and that's where they're needed. The question I've got is, in the document, it says we're going to get better houses. And I'd like to ask, how are we going to get better houses? Are we going to have a minimum build code? Because anecdotally, what I'm told is the build quality of these boxes that's going up in all our fields is shocking, terrible. So we need to do something for the people that are buying these houses to at least guarantee them a minimum level of quality, you know.
Councillor Bourne.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to briefly say that I think this is a good plan. I think it's been very carefully thought through. I think all the issues have been looked at, and sensible decisions have been made regarding housing numbers, economic growth. This is about economic growth, not the strange. If we build it, they will come of the previous plan, where the economic plan was to build houses to get people. What jobs were they going to do except build houses? It was very strange. And I'm pleased that another councillor, who I won't name, mentioned, the dire predictions that were made in this chamber a year ago, that removing the previous plan the sky was going to fall in, there was a free fall for developers, there was going to be concreting over everything because the dire risk and the horror that was going to be unleashed because we were actually thinking again about the plan. Well, thankfully that didn't happen. Thankfully, we still have a lovely and green county, and once we have the local plan, this local plan in place, it'll be further safeguarded, and it'll be a lot safer than it was under the previous draft of the plan. Thank you.
Who else was there? Who hasn't spoken? Councillor Dunbar. Was somebody else?
I would just like to say, as I'm currently a member of the CPRE, I have already got that as a delegation time. I think the affordable housing is a very good policy, and I think that together with the brownfield site policies, I think it's a really good plan and it has my full support.
Councillor Davey. Yes. And now I'll go to Councillor.
Yes, Chair, I would have kept quiet, but Councillor Bourne there has upset us a little bit, because it looks to me like he's never even bothered to read the papers. Because there's 17,700 houses and the total protection of the Greenbelt is an anathema. What it does is it dumps the houses into the southeast of the county. And we'll have these new towns formed, and you can see one of them, if you just drive down towards Morpeth this way, you look over to the right, you can actually see one forming. And I'm not sure that whether its name will be kind of Morplington or Bedlingpeth, because it's going to cram and jam between the two. And the house numbers in the southeast are absolutely huge. In the west of the county, over the next years until 2035, there will only be 800 and odd houses developed, of which we've already heard of Councillor Dale, 500 of those will be around Hexham. And I have to totally agree with the people who said, you know, this will kill off villages. It certainly will. But it won't only kill off villages, it'll put major pressure on the services of this county council in the rural areas, because you'll be servicing many, many, many more older people, as already been said. The other thing that I find strange, and it's already been mentioned here today, but I really do find strange, is that we have agreed to move on with a draft economic strategy on page, whatever it was, 43 in today's papers. If you're running a local plan, it has to be based on an economic strategy that's sound. Ours is a draft strategy, so how can it be proven sound when we're going to publish and then talk about what's got to go in the plan when it's already not in the plan? You've taken us into the combined authority. We're very pleased with that. We think it'll be a great thing for the future, but they will have a plan. The new mayor, when that mayor is elected, will have to have a plan, and the combined authority will move forward. The three incumbents will form an economic plan that may be completely and utterly different to the economic plan that we have here today. So, as the other two local authorities within the combined authority have settled plans, they will only need to adjust theirs. We haven't got a plan. So my question really, because there's a question in this, is this premature? Because currently I cannot see it being found sound. And I'm very, very concerned that at the last minute, you are doing very, very well in developing these things. Got to say, I was quite happy to hear the stuff that was coming around, but at the last minute you've rushed it through. And that rush has mean you haven't got your own economic strategy in, you've got an out-of-date housing strategy, because it was from the last one, and you've got lower housing numbers in rural areas, which will really damage rural areas in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson, and then Councillor Grimshaw. And I want to get this. You don't want to speak, Councillor Wilson.
We've heard about affordable housing. Can anybody in this room know there's been a development in their area that the developer has actually built the houses he agreed to on affordable housing? Not one. I don't believe anybody in here can say, oh, the developer promised 10 houses and we're getting more.
You're going to get an answer in front of you. Councillor Gibson?
But then,
16 out of 16.
well, yeah, you're lucky, because at St. Delaval there was supposed to be 30. They got 3, I think. And the only way we're going to get around this, if we tell the developers, right, you can have affordable housing, but you build them first. You build them first, but not one of them will ever do that. Not one developer will do that. I think they should say, right, you're going to build 5, 10, build them first and get on with the houses. That's the only way you're going to get it done.
Right, okay. Councillor Daly.
All right, Chair, thank you very much on this. I was happy and delighted to second the motion or the recommendation to move this forward from Councillor Riddle. And I just want to reinforce a couple of key points. If we recall back to, when the world was going to fall apart and the sky was going to fall down and we were all going to be, locked up with the removal of Labour's former core strategy, which was an absolutely unashamed plan to build and concrete over our green belt. And we absolutely did not want that. This local plan is about sustainable growth, and it is absolutely unashamedly ambitious. It links into what we need in skills and in terms of employment and in terms of where we need to identify housing growth which is appropriate within our county. But there's been various things which have been said in this meeting, and I just thought, you know, people saying that they've read things back to front and been up all night reading them, perhaps if they'd read the report, it might have helped. So let me try and help you. If you all turn to page 106. So, 43. So let me tell you what you're actually voting on today. You're voting to allow this plan to progress. My good mate, Councillor Reid, I've name-checked him, he'll probably stand up, stole my thunder. We are simply allowing this to be passported forward. So, let me tell you what you're agreeing for. You're agreeing today to 11 things happening. An early notification email to town and parishes, formal consultation letters going out to town and parishes, 23 information sharing events in our towns and in our villages across Northumberland, a leaflet to all addresses. Every single house in Northumberland is going to get a consultation leaflet. Press releases. There'll be statutory notices, articles in the Northumberland News, the use of social media to raise awareness, clear links to the front page of the council website, presentation at the local area councils, and parish councils will be invited to attend, and parish councils will be also asked to raise awareness of the consultation. So today, members, to be very clear, and it's in the report, and I'm sure the most of you have read it, what you're agreeing to is this plan moving forward to the next stage, and it will end up eventually with an inspector. But before it ends up with an inspector, you've got a 6-week window. And to be clear, let me tell you what that 6-week window is, for those who didn't read the report. From the 30th of January until the 13th of March, 6 weeks, you will be able to make representation on the plan, and the grounds on which you'll be able to make representation on the plan are explained in point 44 on page 106, and they are the tests of soundness around positively prepared, justified, effective and consistent with national policy. So all we're asking you for today is, this is not set in concrete. This is about taking it forward to the next step and ultimately to end up with an inspector who will come with a view. And I think it is really important today, and I know that Councillor Riddle said it, but I want to reaffirm it. The massive debt of gratitude that we owe to Councillor Horncastle and the LDF working group, to those members who've been involved in the process, and particularly to staff, because I know for a fact there's been blood, sweat and probably tears over this and the previous work that's been done. And I think this is a glowing testimony to the excellent staff that we have working in this authority, and I think we owe them a huge debt of gratitude for producing a plan which is ambitious, which is sustainable, and I think will test an inspector, and the inspector, he or she, will find this plan to be absolutely bang on for what Northumberland needs. So on behalf of the administration, and I hope all councillors in this chamber, I want to thank every single member of our planning staff who are sitting here today, and I really think they deserve a round of applause. And I move the recommendation, Chair.
I want to move, but very quickly, Grant. Yeah.
Yes. We would like to, would like to take a 2 or 3 minute recess to speak about No. Move on. Move to the vote. We're moving it forward.
Sorry, Grant. We've been at this for 10 years. I want to get it done. Right, I need to move to the vote. What's that? I'm being advised to move to the vote. So, sorry. If you'd come in earlier, I could have done something. Right, we have the recommendations in front of us. I want to take them en bloc because they're all intertwined. That is on page 95, and there are 8 recommendations.
You did have a request for recorded vote, or name vote. You didn't.
There was a request for a name vote. Do we need that? All right, I need to have a show of hands. Those in favour of the name vote. Carried. Right. We are voting in favour or against this. So I'll hand over to Liam to start and shout out. Okay?
Thank you, Chairman. Those are the recommendations on pages 95 and 96 of your agenda booklet, should you be in any doubt. Numbers 1 to 8. I'll begin, as I always do, with Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Bond. For. Councillor Bain. For. Councillor Bridget. Against. Councillor Campbell. Sorry,
Abstain.
Councillor Carty. Abstain. I've just been momentarily thrown by the microphone under my nose. Councillor Castle has left. Councillor Clark. Abstain. Councillor Crosby. For. Councillor Dale. Councillor Daly. For. Councillor Grant Davy. Abstain. Councillor Dodd.
For.
Councillor Dunbar. For. Councillor Dungworth. Abstain. Councillor Dunn. Abstain. Councillor Flux. For. Councillor Foster. Abstain. Councillor Gallagher. Abstain. Councillor Gibson. For. Councillor Gobin. Abstain. Councillor Grimshaw. Abstain. Councillor Heppel. Abstain. Councillor Hill. For. Councillor Hummer. For. Councillor Horncastle. For. Councillor Hutchison. For. Councillor Jackson. For. Councillor Jones. For. Councillor Kennedy.
Gone.
Gone. Councillor Lang. Abstain. Councillor Ledger. Abstain. Councillor Moore. For. Councillor Murray. For. Councillor Nesbitt. Councillor Oliver. For. Councillor Parry. Abstain. Councillor Patterson. For. Councillor Pitcock.
Abstain.
Councillor Purvis.
Abstain.
Councillor Quinn. For. Councillor Reid.
For.
Councillor Renner Thompson.
For.
I believe Councillor Richards has left. Councillor Rickerby. For. Councillor Riddle. For. Councillor Robinson. For. Councillor Roughhead. For. Councillor Sanderson. For. Councillor Seymour. For. Councillor Sharp. For. Councillor Simpson. Abstain. Councillor Stewart. For. Councillor Stowe. For. Councillor Swinburne. For. Councillor Swithenbank.
Abstain.
Councillor Thorne.
For.
Councillor Towns.
For.
Councillor Wallace.
For.
Councillor Watson.
For.
Councillor Wearmouth.
For.
Councillor Webb.
Abstain.
Councillor Wilson.
Abstain.
Thank you, members.
While he's adding up, I'm at 5 to 6, and there is a little bit business after this. Do you want us to crack on? Oh, crack on. Right.
37 for, 1 against, 22 abstentions.
37 for, 1 against, 22 abstentions. So it's carried. I think that's 10 years' work, I believe. Right. 12. Report of the Executive Director of HR, OD and Electoral Registration. Parish renaming under Local Government Act. Councillor Ruffhead?
Can I suggest that we take the 2 recommendations separately, because obviously I'm in favour of the first one, because obviously parish should be able to do what it wants, but the second one I would be a bit concerned that we're delegating powers to officers, and we don't want too much delegation, and surely when a parish is wanting to change its name, it's something that full council should consider for future. So I would recommend we take the 2 recommendations separately.
And have you got support for that? That proposal? Yeah. Is there a seconder? Seconder. All those in favour of doing that? 2. 3. Right. That's those against? That's enough. Right. Can we agree that with change of name? Thank you. 13. Committee matters. 1. Standards Committee. Parish Council representation. Can we agree that? Right. Well, you have the chance. It's called democracy. You know. 2. North Northumberland Local Area Council. This is mainly for information. Councillor Thorne, do you want to comment on this at all? Or?
Well, just to say, Chair, that it's largely as a result of the pressure of business and the fact that, you know, we want all the planning applications to be dealt with properly and carefully. So we decided to divide the business between planning applications and rights of way. So we've set up a new subcommittee, of which I'm the chair.
And because you get a lot of rights of way activity in that large area.
We do indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just a minute, we need to amend the wording very slightly in the last paragraph. So the last words are the Vice Chair of Planning of the LAC.
Yeah. Are we happy with that? Right. Now, item 14, exclusion of the press and public. Can we agree this? We'll give them a moment to get out. And we move to the pink papers at the back of your agenda.